Single dad shared his lunch with a crying woman next day. 12 armed guards escorted him to work because the stranger he tried to comfort wasn't just heartbroken. She was hiding a secret so dangerous that his one act of kindness dragged him into a world no ordinary father should ever step into. Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. The morning sun cast long shadows across the industrial buildings of Riverbend Steelworks as Ethan Cole clocked out from his night shift. His shoulders ached from hours of operating the forklift, but his movements remained steady as he gathered his lunchbox and thermos. The familiar weight of them brought comfort, simple things he could count on, just like the quiet park where he spent his after-shift meals. The autumn air felt crisp against his face as he walked the 3 blocks to Riverside Park. Red and golden leaves skittered across the cracked sidewalk, and the sound of distant traffic merged with the rustling branches overhead. Ethan breathed in deeply, letting the morning settle around him like a comfortable blanket. His usual bench waited for him, its weathered wood showing patches of green where moss had started to grow in the cracks. Ethan sat down with a quiet groan, his work boots scuffing against the concrete path. He unzipped his lunchbox with careful movements, arranging his simple meal on the napkin beside him. The peanut butter sandwich he'd made the night before, apple slices in a small container, and the thermos of vegetable soup Lily had prepared. The thought of his daughter brought a smile to his tired face. She'd insisted on making the soup, saying he needed something warm after working all night. At 17, she was becoming more and more like her mother, always thinking of others first. A sound caught his attention, something between a gasp and a hiccup. Across the path, about 20 feet away, sat a woman on another bench. Her navy blue business suit looked expensive, but it was slightly rumpled, as if she'd been wearing it for too long. Her shoulders shook with subtle movements as she pressed a tissue to her face. Ethan found himself frozen, sandwich halfway to his mouth. The woman was clearly trying to hide her distress, turning her face away whenever other morning park visitors walked past. Her dark hair, pulled back in what had probably been a neat bun earlier, now had loose strands falling around her face. He set his sandwich down, wrestling with indecision. His natural instinct was to help, but he knew how it might look. A stranger approaching a distressed woman in a park. Still, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was seriously wrong. After several minutes of internal debate, Ethan carefully packed half of his sandwich back into its container and poured some of his soup into the thermos cup. With slow, deliberate movements that he hoped appeared non-threatening, he stood up and walked toward her bench. "Excuse me, ma'am?" His voice came out soft and steady, the same tone he used when Lily was upset. "I couldn't help but notice you seem to be having a rough morning. Would you like to share some lunch?" The woman's head snapped up, her eyes red-rimmed but sharp with surprise and wariness. She quickly wiped at her cheeks with the crumpled tissue. "Oh, no thank you. I'm fine, really." Her voice wavered despite her attempt at composure. Ethan remained standing at a respectful distance, holding the food out slightly. "Sometimes it helps to eat something, even when things are hard. It's just a peanut butter sandwich and some homemade soup. My daughter made it. She's getting pretty good at cooking." The mention of his daughter seemed to ease some of the tension in the woman's shoulders. She looked at him more carefully now, taking in his work clothes and the honest concern in his expression. "I couldn't possibly," she began, but her voice trailed off as her stomach growled audibly. A flush crept across her cheeks. "Please," Ethan said gently. "I've got plenty." He set the food on the far end of her bench and stepped back, giving her space. After a moment's hesitation, she reached for the soup cup. "Thank you," she whispered. I haven't eaten since yesterday." Ethan nodded and sat down on his own bench again, trying to give her privacy while still being present if she wanted to talk. They ate in silence for a few minutes, the woman taking small, careful sips of the soup. "This is very kind of you," she said finally, her voice stronger. "I'm sorry for being such a mess. It's just been—" She shook her head, unable to finish the sentence. "Someone I trusted at work. I found out they've been—" Again, she stopped, her hands trembling slightly around the soup cup. "Sometimes people let us down in ways we never expected," Ethan offered quietly, thinking of his own experiences with betrayal and loss. The woman nodded, dabbing at her eyes again. "I don't feel safe there anymore, but I don't know what to." Her words were cut off by the sharp ring of her phone. She jumped, nearly spilling the soup, and pulled the device from her purse with shaking hands. The color drained from her face as she looked at the screen. "I have to go," she said quickly, standing up. "Thank you for the food and the kindness. I'm sorry, I really must." She gathered her purse and turned to leave, then paused for a moment. "Your daughter makes excellent soup." Before Ethan could respond, she was walking away, her heels clicking rapidly on the path. He watched until she disappeared around the corner, an unexpected heaviness settling in his chest. Something about her distress and gratitude touched a chord in him, and he found himself hoping she would find her way through whatever trouble she was facing. The rest of his lunch felt quieter than usual. The sandwich seemed less satisfying, and the remaining soup had lost some of its warmth. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, Ethan packed up his lunchbox and headed home, his thoughts still lingering on the mysterious woman's tears. That evening, in their small but tidy kitchen, Ethan watched Lily set their dinner table. The familiar sight of his daughter's dark ponytail swinging as she moved around the kitchen reminded him of how blessed he was, despite life's hardships. The scent of baked chicken and roasted vegetables filled their modest home, but his mind kept drifting back to the park bench and the woman's trembling shoulders. "You're quiet tonight, Dad," Lily observed as she sat down across from him. "Everything okay at work?" "Work was fine," he replied, serving her a portion of chicken. "Just met someone today who seemed to be going through a rough time. Makes you realize how quickly life can change for people." The kitchen was bright with morning sunlight as Ethan and Lily shared breakfast. Steam rose from their mugs of tea, and the smell of toasted bread filled their small but tidy home. Lily had sketched another design on her napkin. She was always drawing something, even during meals. "You should see what we're learning in engineering class, Dad," Lily said, pushing her dark hair behind her ears. "I think I finally understand how hydraulic systems work." Ethan smiled, his tired eyes crinkling at the corners. "That's wonderful, sweetheart. Maybe you can explain it to me tonight?" He glanced at his watch. "I've got to head out now. Don't forget your lunch money." The drive to work was shrouded in fog, turning the familiar streets of Riverbend into something dreamlike. Ethan's old pickup truck hummed steadily as he mentally organized his day. The Reynolds order needed moving by noon, and there were those steel beams in Bay 3 that had to be relocated. Simple tasks, predictable tasks, the kind that gave his life structure. As he turned into the employee parking lot, something felt off. The fog had thinned enough for him to see figures standing near the main entrance. Too many figures, too still, too uniform. His stomach tightened as he parked in his usual spot. 12 men in black tactical gear stood in a precise line across the factory entrance. Their stance was military rigid, and the holsters on their hips held very real weapons. Ethan's hands grew cold on his steering wheel. Other workers were clustering in small groups, shooting worried glances at the guards. Some pulled out phones, already spreading the word. A few headed back to their cars, uncertain whether to stay. Ethan's mind raced to Lily. Had something happened to her? Was there some kind of threat to the factory? He'd worked here 15 years without a single incident. Surely he hadn't done anything wrong? As he stepped out of his truck, 3 of the guards immediately broke formation and walked toward him with purposeful strides. Their boots seemed unnaturally loud on the asphalt. "Mr. Ethan Cole?" the lead guard asked. His voice was professional, neither friendly nor hostile. Ethan nodded, his throat too dry to speak. "Sir, we need you to come with us." "What's this about?" Ethan managed to ask. "My daughter? Is she okay?" "We're not at liberty to discuss anything at this time, sir. Please come with us." More workers were arriving now, creating a backdrop of whispers and stares. Ethan caught fragments of their speculation. "Did you see those guards? They're taking Cole. What'd he do?" "Never thought he'd be the type." Mr. Halpern hurried over from the supervisor's entrance, his round face flushed with concern. "What's going on here?" "Ethan's one of my best workers." The guard turned to him with mechanical precision. "This doesn't concern you, Mr. Halpern. Please return to your duties." Halpern's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. He shot Ethan an apologetic look before backing away, his shoulders slumped in defeat. 2 guards positioned themselves on either side of Ethan, while the third took point. They moved with practiced coordination, maintaining a respectful but unmistakably controlling formation around him. The walk through the factory floor seemed endless. The familiar hum of machinery was muted by the sound of conversations stopping mid-sentence as they passed. Faces peered around corners and over equipment. Some of his co-workers couldn't meet his eyes. Others stared openly with a mixture of concern and curiosity. They passed the break room where he'd eaten countless lunches. The maintenance bay where he'd helped Jimmy fix his forklift last week, the safety board showing 847 days without incidents. Everything looked the same but felt completely different. The guards led him toward a part of the building he'd rarely seen, the executive wing. The industrial concrete floors gave way to carpeting, the fluorescent lights replaced by warm recessed lighting. The air here smelled of coffee and expensive cologne instead of machine oil and metal. They stopped at a heavy wooden door near the end of the hallway. Ethan's heart hammered against his ribs as one of the guards reached for the handle. The brass nameplate on the door was new, still gleaming, but in his state of anxiety, Ethan couldn't focus enough to read it. The door swung open to reveal an office unlike anything else in the factory. The executive office felt vast and imposing. Ethan stood just inside the doorway, his work boots sinking into plush burgundy carpet that probably cost more than his monthly mortgage payment. Morning sunlight streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows, making the polished mahogany desk gleam. Fresh-cut flowers filled a crystal vase, their sweet scent mixing with the leather and wood polish that spoke of power and wealth. His hands felt rough and out of place, and he resisted the urge to stuff them in his pockets. The chair across from the desk looked expensive, the kind with real leather and brass studs. He didn't dare sit without invitation, so he remained standing, trying not to fidget. The quiet hum of the building's air conditioning seemed unusually loud in the silence. The door opened behind him, and Ethan turned, his breath catching in his throat. There, in an impeccably tailored navy suit, stood the woman from the park. Gone were the tears and trembling shoulders. Her silver-streaked dark hair was perfectly styled, her posture straight and commanding. Only her eyes, warm and slightly apologetic, reminded him of the vulnerable person he'd shared his lunch with yesterday. "Mr. Cole," she said, her voice steady and professional. "Thank you for coming. Please, don't look so worried." She moved around him to stand behind the desk, every movement precise and purposeful. "You're—" Ethan started, then stopped, unsure how to continue. "Marina Dawson," she supplied, extending her hand. Her grip was firm but not overwhelming. "CEO of Dawson Industrial Holdings. As of last week, we're the new owners of Riverbend Steelworks." Ethan's mind reeled. The woman he'd offered half a peanut butter sandwich to was the head of a major corporation? He remembered the simple way she'd accepted his thermos of soup, how naturally they'd sat together on that park bench. "I owe you an explanation," Marina continued, her professional demeanor softening slightly, "and an apology for the rather dramatic entrance this morning. Please, sit down." She gestured to the leather chair. Ethan lowered himself carefully into the seat, still trying to process the situation. "The security guards were necessary, unfortunately." Marina's expression tightened. "Yesterday, when you found me in the park, I had just uncovered evidence of extensive corruption within several divisions of our corporate structure. Long-standing executives have been engaging in practices that—" She paused, choosing her words carefully. "Let's just say they've been betraying not only this company, but the hardworking people who keep it running." She moved to life, the window, gazing out at the factory floor below. "Hours after our encounter, I had to face the board of directors. The confrontation was—" Her hands clasped together tightly. "Intense. Several board members tried to block my investigation. Others threatened legal action. 2 attempted to have me removed as CEO. Turning back to face him, Marina's expression softened. "But you know what helped me stay strong through all of that?" She didn't wait for his response. The simple kindness of a stranger who saw someone in pain and offered what he had. No questions asked, no advantage sought. Just pure human compassion. Ethan felt his cheeks warm. "Ma'am, I just shared my lunch." "Anyone would have." "No," she interrupted gently. "Not anyone would have. Most people would have walked past, pretending not to notice. You didn't just share your lunch, Mr. Cole. You shared your humanity. And it reminded me exactly why I'm fighting this battle." She returned to her desk, sitting down and folding, her hands in front of her. "I'm sorry about the security detail this morning. I trust very few people right now, and I needed to ensure you arrived here safely and privately. The corrupt executives I mentioned, they have allies throughout the company. I couldn't risk them intercepting you or trying to influence you before we could speak." Ethan shifted in his chair, processing her words. The morning's confusion was starting to make more sense, though he still couldn't quite grasp why he was here. He was just a forklift operator, about as far from corporate politics as you could get. Marina leaned forward slightly, her eyes intent. "Mr. Cole, I need your help." And before you say anything, this is far more important than you can imagine. She paused, studying his face. What I'm about to ask of you could change everything. For this company, for the workers, and for the future of Riverbend Steelworks. The morning sun caught the silver in her hair as she waited for his response, and Ethan found himself remembering how she'd looked yesterday, lost and alone on that park bench. Now she radiated strength and purpose, but he could still see traces of that same vulnerability in her eyes. Marina gestured to the leather chair. "Please, sit down, Mr. Cole." Her voice was gentle but carried the quiet authority of someone used to being obeyed. Ethan lowered himself into the chair, trying not to look as out of place as he felt. His work uniform seemed rough and plain against the office's polished elegance. The morning sun through the windows cast long shadows across Marina's desk, where a single manila folder lay closed. "I want to properly thank you for yesterday," Marina said, her professional demeanor softening slightly. "That simple act of kindness, you'll never know how much it meant." Ethan shifted uncomfortably. "Anyone would have done the same, ma'am. Marina, please." She smiled briefly before her expression turned serious. "And no, Mr. Cole, not anyone, would have done the same. That's precisely why I need your help." She opened the manila folder and spread out several documents. "What I'm about to share with you is deeply confidential. Yesterday, before our encounter in the park, I discovered evidence of widespread corruption across multiple companies we've recently acquired, including Riverbend Steelworks." Ethan's throat felt dry. "Corruption?" Marina nodded grimly. "Systematic wage suppression, deliberately ignored safety violations, discriminatory hiring practices." She tapped the papers with a manicured finger. "The numbers don't lie, but they're cleverly hidden. Someone's been cooking the books for years." The weight of her words settled heavy in Ethan's stomach. He thought about his coworkers, good people working hard to support their families. How bad is it? Bad enough that people could get hurt, or worse. Marina's eyes held a fierce determination. "I need someone I can trust on the inside. Someone who can observe, NBC, report anything that seems wrong or dangerous. Your compassion tells me I can trust your honesty more than any executive wearing a suit." Ethan ran a calloused hand across his face. "You want me to? Spy?" "I want you to be my eyes and ears," Marina corrected gently. "To notice things that don't seem right. To help me protect the workers who depend on this company for their livelihood." His mind raced to his daughter. "What about Lily? If someone finds out?" "I've already thought of that." Marina pressed a button on her desk phone. "Send them in, please." Two people entered the office, a man and woman in plain clothes who could have passed for ordinary office workers. Their alert eyes and subtle earpieces gave away their true profession. "Meet Sarah Chin and Marcus Rodriguez," Marina said. "They'll be your security detail. They're trained to blend in and stay invisible while keeping you and Lily safe." Ethan's hands gripped the armrests. "Security detail? Miss Dawson, Marina, this is starting to sound dangerous." "It's just a precaution," she assured him. "They'll keep their distance. No one will notice them unless they need to intervene. Sarah will pose as a new neighbor in your apartment complex, and Marcus will work in the factory as a maintenance contractor." The agents nodded professionally before quietly leaving the office. Ethan felt overwhelmed. Just yesterday, his biggest worry had been making sure Lily had enough money for her art supplies. "I know this is a lot to take in," Marina said, her voice softening, "but I wouldn't ask if I didn't believe it was necessary. These people we're dealing with, they've hurt families, endangered lives, all for profit. It has to stop." Ethan thought about his coworkers again. Jim with his bad back who couldn't afford proper medical care, Maria who'd been passed over for promotion 3 times despite her experience, young Tommy who'd almost lost a hand last month due to faulty equipment. "What exactly would you need me to do?" he asked. "Just observe. Document anything that seems wrong. Take photos if you can do so safely. I'll give you a secure way to contact me." Marina pulled out a simple flip phone. "This is a dedicated line. My private number is the only one programmed in it." Ethan took the phone, his hand trembling slightly. "I'm just a forklift operator." "You're someone who stopped to help a crying stranger in the park," Marina countered. "That's exactly the kind of person I need right now." After a moment's hesitation, Ethan nodded. "Okay, I'll help." Relief flooded Marina's face. "Thank you." She stood and walked him to the door. "Sarah and Marcus will start today." Remember, they're there if you need them, but otherwise, they'll stay invisible. Two different guards waited outside, these ones in plain clothes rather than tactical gear. They flanked Ethan as he walked back through the executive hallway, their presence much less conspicuous than the earlier escort. As they approached the factory floor, Ethan could feel the stares of his coworkers. The morning shift was in full swing now, and whispers followed him across the concrete floor. Jim from maintenance gaped openly. Maria from quality control quickly looked away when he caught her eye. Tommy, working the assembly line, called out, "Everything okay, Mr. Cole?" Ethan managed a weak smile and wave. "All good, Tommy, just a mix-up with some paperwork." He made his way to his forklift, heart pounding with the weight of his new secret. The guards melted away into the background, but he could feel their watchful presence. As he settled into the familiar seat of his machine, the whispers continued to ripple through the factory floor. Starting his shift, Ethan tried to focus on the routine of moving pallets and checking inventory, but his mind kept spinning. What had he gotten himself into? How would he keep this from Lily? And, most importantly, what might he discover now that he was really looking for problems? The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the warehouse floor as Ethan guided his forklift between towering steel shelves. The familiar hum of machinery that had always been comforting now felt different, charged with an unsettling tension. He couldn't shake the weight of dozens of eyes following his movements. As he carefully lowered a pallet of raw materials, he noticed Mike Harrison, his usual supervisor, watching from the corner. The moment their eyes met, Mike quickly turned away, pretending to check something on his clipboard. It was the third time that afternoon he'd caught Mike doing that. During the next hour, Ethan made his rounds through the loading dock. Two coworkers he normally joked with, Tom and Dave, were taking their break by the water cooler. As he approached, their conversation died abruptly. Tom mumbled something about needed paperwork and hurried away. Dave wouldn't meet Ethan's eyes. "Hey, Dave," Ethan tried, keeping his voice casual. "How's Sarah doing with her science project?" "Fine," Dave replied curtly, crushing his paper cup and walking away without another word. The rejection stung. Just yesterday, Dave had spent 15 minutes showing Ethan pictures of his daughter's volcano experiment. Now, he acted like Ethan carried some contagious disease. By mid-afternoon, the whispers had grown more noticeable. Fragments of conversations reached his ears as he worked. Armed guards. Must have done something. Corporate spy, maybe. When break time finally came, Ethan headed to the locker room, his shoulders tense from the strain of maintaining a neutral expression all day. The room fell silent as he entered. 3 workers gathering their things suddenly found urgent reasons to leave. He turned the combination on his locker, the metal dial clicking loudly in the awkward silence. As he opened the door, a folded piece of paper fluttered to the floor. His heart skipped a beat. He hadn't left any notes for himself. Ethan glanced around before bending to pick it up. The paper was torn from a standard notepad, the kind found in any office. The message, written in block letters with a black marker, made his blood run cold. "Stop asking questions you're not supposed to ask." His hands trembled slightly as he read it again. The threat was clear enough, but what made it truly frightening was that he hadn't asked any questions yet. Someone was scared enough of what he might discover to try to intimidate him before he even started. Ethan carefully folded the note and slipped it into his wallet. He couldn't risk Lily finding it if he took it home, and he didn't want to leave it in his locker. His daughter was perceptive, too perceptive sometimes. She'd notice if something was wrong, and the last thing he wanted was to worry her. In the relative privacy of the break room's corner, Ethan pulled out the phone number Marina had given him. It was written on a plain business card with no other information. She had been very specific. Use it only if necessary, and only from a secure location. He stepped outside to the parking lot, making sure he was alone before dialing. The phone rang twice before Marina answered. "Mr. Cole?" Her voice was sharp with concern. They had agreed he wouldn't call unless it was important. "I found a note in my locker," he said quietly, explaining the situation and the growing tension at work. There was a pause. Then Marina spoke, her tone clipped and professional. "I appreciate you reporting this promptly. Please continue your day as normal. We'll adjust security measures accordingly. You may notice some changes, but they'll be subtle. Trust me on this." After hanging up, Ethan returned to his forklift, trying to focus on the familiar routine of his work. Throughout the afternoon, he caught glimpses of new faces, a maintenance worker he'd never seen before, a delivery person who seemed to linger longer than necessary, a security guard, patrolling an area that rarely saw any security presence. Marina's promised changes were already in motion. The rest of his shift passed in a blur of uncomfortable encounters and avoided gazes. By the time he clocked out, Ethan's nerves were frayed from the constant tension of maintaining a normal appearance while feeling anything but normal. The drive home was a welcome respite, but as he pulled into his driveway, he had to consciously relax his grip on the steering wheel. He sat for a moment, taking deep breaths, preparing himself to be the steady, untroubled father Lily needed him to be. Inside, he found Lily at the kitchen table, textbooks spread around her as she worked on homework. The sight of her safe, focused, ordinary helped center him. "Dad." She looked up with a bright smile. "How was work?" "Oh, he managed a casual shrug, hanging up his jacket. "The usual. How was school?" "You won't believe what happened in art class today." Lily launched into an animated story about a mixed-up paint palette that had somehow resulted in an accidentally beautiful sunset effect. Ethan began preparing dinner, letting his daughter's cheerful chatter wash over him. He chopped vegetables for a stir-fry, trying to keep his hands steady as he worked. The threatening note seemed to burn in his wallet, but he forced himself to focus on Lily's voice, on the simple act of cooking dinner, on maintaining this pocket of normalcy in their small kitchen. "And Miss Peterson said mine was the best in the class," Lily concluded proudly, sketching something in her notebook as she talked. "That's wonderful, sweetheart," Ethan replied, stirring the vegetables in the pan. He was grateful his back was to her as he added, "Could you set the table?" The familiar routine of their evening continued. Dinner, dishes, homework questions, casual conversation. But beneath it all, Ethan felt the weight of his new reality pressing down on him. Someone at work knew about his bowl, connection to Marina. Someone was watching. Someone wanted him to stay quiet. As Lily chatted about an upcoming science test, Ethan nodded and smiled, all while wondering what he had gotten himself into, and more importantly, what he might have gotten his daughter into. But he couldn't let her see his fear. Not now. Not ever. The morning sunlight streamed through the small kitchen window of the Cole household, catching the steam rising from Ethan's coffee mug. Lily sat across from him at their worn but well-loved breakfast table, pushing her scrambled eggs around with her fork. Something was clearly on her mind. "Dad?" she finally asked, her voice hesitant. "Why did Jenny say she saw security guards around you at work yesterday?" "Her mom works in accounting at the factory." Ethan's hand paused midway to his mouth, toast hovering in the air. He set it down carefully, buying time to frame his response. "The company's new owner is putting in some extra safety measures," he explained, keeping his tone light and reassuring. "Nothing to worry about, sweetheart." Lily's brow furrowed. "But armed guards, Dad? That seems scary." "It's just temporary," he assured her, reaching across to squeeze her hand. "Sometimes big companies do things that look strange from the outside, but I promise you, everything's okay." At work, Ethan settled into his forklift with new awareness. Marina's request to observe rang in his ears. He'd always noticed things around the factory, but now he watched with purpose, keeping mental notes of everything that seemed off. By mid-morning, he overheard a conversation that made him pause. In the break room, Harold Matthews, a skilled machinist with 30 years' experience, sat slumped at a table, looking defeated. Supervisor Kent Rogers loomed over him. "Look, Harold," Rogers was saying, his voice carrying a hint of threat. "You're getting up there in years. Why not take the early retirement package while it's still on the table? Would be a shame if there were performance issues later." Harold's weathered face tightened. "I've got 5 more years before full pension, Kent. You know that. Times are changing. Younger workers cost less." Rogers shrugged and walked away, leaving Harold staring into his coffee cup. Ethan's hands tightened on his steering wheel. He'd known Harold for years. The man could still outwork most younger employees. This wasn't right. Later that afternoon, Ethan witnessed another troubling scene. Maria Gonzalez, one of their best quality control specialists, stood rigid as shift manager Peterson berated her in front of everyone. "This is the second time this week," Peterson's voice carried across the floor. "Are you having trouble understanding simple instructions?" "Sir, the specifications were unclear," Maria replied firmly. "I flagged the inconsistency because maybe if you spent less time questioning procedures and more time following them," Peterson cut her off, "we wouldn't have these problems." Ethan noticed how Peterson never spoke to other QC specialists this way, all of whom happened to be white men. Maria's face remained professional, but her hands trembled slightly as she walked away. During his lunch break, Ethan typed careful, factual notes about both incidents into his phone, sending them through the secure channel Marina had set up. Within minutes, he received a response requesting a meeting after his shift. At 5:30, Ethan found himself in a small conference room on the executive floor. Marina sat across from him, her blazer draped over her chair, looking more casual than their previous meeting. "Thank you for your observations," she began, running a hand through her short, silver-streaked hair. Unfortunately, they confirmed patterns we're seeing across multiple facilities. "I've known these people for years," Ethan said quietly. "Harold's got kids in college. Maria's one of our best." Marina's expression softened. "You know what it's like to be undermined just for being different?" She gave a bitter laugh. 25 years in corporate leadership, and I still get called sweetheart in board meetings. Still have men explain my own policies to me." She stood, pacing slowly. "When I started, they said women weren't tough enough for manufacturing. Every promotion was a battle. Every mistake was used to prove women couldn't lead." She turned to face him. "That's why seeing what's happening to Maria? It's personal." Something in her vulnerability made Ethan want to share too. 5 years ago, he found himself saying, "When Sarah, my wife, got sick, some people at work treated me differently. Like a single dad couldn't handle responsibility anymore." He swallowed hard. "She fought the cancer for 8 months. I'd come to work because we needed the insurance, then rushed to the hospital. Lily was only 9. Some days I could barely function, but I had to prove them wrong. Had to show I could still do my job, still be a good father." Marina had gone very still, listening. "How did you manage?" "One day at a time," Ethan replied softly. "Found strength I didn't know I had. Like you did, fighting your way up the corporate ladder." They sat in understanding silence for a moment. Then Marina straightened, professional mask sliding back into place, but her eyes remained warm. "Thank you for trusting me with that, Ethan, and thank you for helping make things right here." The rain was steady as Ethan drove home, windshield wipers keeping rhythm with his thoughts. He thought about Marina's battles in the corporate world, so different from his own life, yet somehow familiar in their core of unwavering determination. Her tough exterior made sense now. It was armor, earned through years of having to prove herself. He thought about how she'd listened to his story about Sarah, really listened. Without the usual awkward platitudes people offered, there'd been recognition in her eyes. She understood what it meant to stand alone, to fight harder than everyone else, just to be seen as equal. The rain fell harder as he turned onto a street, and Ethan reflected on how strength could wear many faces. Sometimes it looked like a CEO fighting corruption in her company. Sometimes it looked like a single dad making lunch for his daughter every morning. Sometimes it showed itself in small acts of courage, standing up for what was right, one careful observation at a time. The kitchen filled with warmth and the sweet aroma of maple syrup as Ethan and Lily worked together at the counter. Morning sunshine poured through their small window, casting golden light across the mixing bowl where Lily stirred pancake batter with focused determination. "Remember what Mom always said about the lumps?" Ethan asked, smiling as he watched his daughter's careful technique. "A few lumps make them fluffier." Lily replied, her voice soft but happy. "I remember." Ethan heated the griddle while Lily finished, stirring. Their Saturday morning ritual felt especially precious today, a pocket of peace after a week of growing tension at work. When Lily poured the first perfect circle of batter, it sizzled satisfyingly against the hot surface. "Your technique's getting better than mine," Ethan said, watching her work. Lily grinned, wielding the spatula with careful pride. "That's because I actually measure the ingredients instead of just guessing like you do." They were just sitting down with their plates when Ethan's phone buzzed. The text message from Marina made his chest tighten slightly. "Need to meet. Important. Kelly's family diner on Route 23? In an hour?" Lily noticed his change in expression. "Everything okay, Dad?" "Yes, honey. Just work stuff." He typed a quick reply confirming the meeting. "I need to go out for a bit after breakfast. Will you be okay working on your art project?" "Sure." Lily drizzled more syrup over her pancakes. "I want to finish that technical drawing anyway." An hour later, Ethan pulled into the parking lot of Kelly's family diner. The restaurant sat just off the highway, its faded sign and weathered siding suggesting decades of reliable service. Inside, the smell of coffee and bacon wrapped around him like a familiar blanket. Marina sat in a back booth, dressed casually in jeans and a sweater so different from her CEO appearance that she might have been a different person. Her hands were wrapped around a coffee cup, and she looked up as Ethan approached. "Thank you for coming." she said quietly as he slid into the seat across from her. I ordered coffee for you too. A tired-looking waitress brought Ethan's coffee and took their orders, just toast for Marina, nothing for Ethan. When they were alone again, Marina leaned forward, her voice barely above a whisper. I need to tell you something, and I need you to understand the full scope of what we're dealing with. Her fingers tightened around her cup. The corruption goes deeper than all. Wage theft and discrimination. Some of these executives, they have connections to groups that specialize in intimidation. Professional thugs who make problems disappear. Ethan felt the coffee turn bitter in his mouth. What kind of problems? Whistleblowers? Union organizers? Anyone who threatens their profit margins. Marina's eyes met his, heavy with concern. I've been reviewing security footage, personnel files, incident reports going back years. There's a pattern of convenient accidents, sudden resignations, people transferring away with no notice. A waitress brought Marina's toast, and they sat in silence until she walked away. Ethan thought about the threatening note in his locker, seeing it in a darker light now. By asking for your help, Marina continued, I may have unintentionally put you on their radar. The security detail I assigned you, it's not just precautionary anymore. I've seen how they operate. They start with threats, then escalate to property damage, and then. She left the sentence unfinished. Ethan thought about Lily, about her technical drawings spread across their kitchen table, about her quiet determination to make beautiful things. The idea of danger touching her made his hands shake. I would understand completely if you want to step back, Marina said softly. I can arrange a transfer to another facility, somewhere safer. No. The word came out before Ethan had fully processed it, but he knew it was right. I've worked alongside these people for years. They're not just coworkers anymore. They're friends, neighbors. If these executives are hurting them, someone has to stand up. It could get dangerous, Marina warned. It's already dangerous for the workers who don't have any protection. Ethan thought about the minority worker he'd seen being berated, about the older employees being pushed out. At least I know what I'm facing now. They don't even know their targets. Marina nodded slowly, respect and worry mingling. In her expression, we'll need to be more careful now, more discreet. I'll give you a new secure phone and we'll need to vary our meeting locations. They spent the next 20 minutes discussing security measures and communication protocols. When they finally stood to leave, Ethan felt the weight of his decision settling onto his shoulders, heavy, but somehow right. As they walked toward their cars, movement caught Ethan's eye. A black SUV sat idling across the parking lot, its tinted windows reflecting the morning sun. As he watched, one window lowered slightly, just enough to suggest someone was watching them. Then it rolled back up, and the vehicle pulled away smoothly. Standing there in the cold morning air, Ethan suddenly understood that this wasn't just about unfair workplace practices anymore. This was something bigger, something darker, and he was now firmly in the middle of it. The modest white church stood peaceful against the morning sky, its simple steeple reaching toward wispy clouds. Inside, sunlight filtered through stained glass windows, casting colorful patterns across worn wooden pews where familiar faces gathered in quiet reverence. Ethan and Lily sat in their usual spot, 5 rows from the front, where they'd attended services together since Lily was small enough to need picture books during the sermon. Today's message focused on finding strength in unexpected places, and Ethan couldn't help but think about the past week's events. He glanced at Lily beside him, her head bowed slightly as she listened to Pastor Mike's gentle words about community and support. After the final hymn, they joined the slow stream of people filing out into the courtyard, the space filled with the pleasant murmur of conversation as church members gathered in small groups, sharing news and planning weekday meals together. Mrs. Henderson, who taught Sunday school, stopped to compliment Lily's new dress, while Mr. Peters discussed the upcoming community food drive with Ethan. A subtle shift in the atmosphere caught Ethan's attention. He turned to see Marina standing near the church's iron gates, wearing a simple blue dress and minimal jewelry, a stark contrast to her usual corporate attire. She looked almost uncertain, something he'd never seen in her before. Mr. Cole, she said softly as she approached, deliberately using his formal name in public. I hope I'm not intruding on your Sunday. Lily looked up with curious eyes, immediately recognizing the woman from news coverage about Dawson Industrial Holdings. Ethan made quick introductions, keeping his voice low and casual. I was wondering, Marina said, her usual commanding presence softened by the setting. If you and Lily might like to visit the Heritage Fair this afternoon? I heard it's quite lovely this time of year. Lily's eyes lit up. The annual Heritage Fair was a beloved local tradition, though they hadn't planned to go this year due to tight finances. Ethan hesitated, but Lily's hopeful expression made the decision for him. "We'd love to," he said, surprising himself with how much he meant it. The fair sprawled across the town common, with white canvas tents and colorful banners fluttering in the autumn breeze. Local artisans displayed handmade crafts, while the smell of kettle corn and apple cider donuts filled the air. Marina insisted on buying tickets for all of them, brushing aside Ethan's protests with a gentle smile. As they walked between stalls, Lily gradually emerged from her initial shyness. She explained the history of the fair to Marina, who listened with genuine interest, asking thoughtful questions that made Lily beam with pride in her local knowledge. "Oh, look at these!" Marina exclaimed, stopping at a display of handmade jewelry. She picked up a simple silver bracelet with a small star charm. "This reminds me of one my grandmother gave me when I was about your age, Lily." While Marina and Lily examined the jewelry, Ethan noticed the tension in Marina's shoulders had eased. The corporate mask had slipped away, revealing a woman who laughed easily at Lily's jokes and shared stories about her own childhood dreams. At the local artist's tent, Lily hesitantly showed Marina her sketchbook. The CEO's eyes widened as she flipped through pages of detailed mechanical drawings, gears, levers, and innovative solutions to everyday problems. "Lily, these are extraordinary," Marina said, studying a sketch of an improved wheelchair design. "You have a genuine talent for engineering concepts. Have you thought about pursuing this professionally?" Lily ducked her head, pleased but embarrassed. "I'd love to, but engineering school is expensive. There are scholarships," Marina said quickly, then caught herself and glanced at Ethan. "I mean, I'd be happy to provide information about educational opportunities. These drawings show real promise." They stopped for ice cream cones, sitting on a wooden bench while watching children play tag on the grass. Marina told them about her own journey through engineering school, being one of only 3 women in her class. "It wasn't easy," she admitted, "but nothing worthwhile ever is. The key is finding people who believe in you." The afternoon passed quickly, filled with easy conversation and shared laughter. As the sun began to set, vendors started packing up their stalls. Marina insisted on buying Lily the silver star bracelet before they left, saying every future engineer needed a lucky charm. The drive home felt peaceful, with Marina's car following behind them through the quiet streets. Lily clutched a small paper bag containing her new bracelet, talking excitedly about everything they'd seen and done. When they reached their house, Marina pulled up alongside them. Through the open windows, they exchanged warm smiles and waves goodbye. Ethan watched her car disappear around the corner, aware of an unfamiliar warmth in his chest, a sense of trust and connection he hadn't expected to find in the midst of their complicated situation. As they walked up the front path, Lily carefully untangled her new bracelet from its tissue paper wrapping. The small silver star caught the last rays of sunlight, twinkling like a promise of better things to come. "I really like her, Dad," Lily said softly, fastening the bracelet around her wrist. Ethan looked down at his daughter, remembering Marina's genuine interest in Lily's dreams and future. "You know what? I do too." The evening settled around their small house, bringing with it a sense of possibility that hadn't been there before. Whatever challenges lay ahead at work, Ethan now felt more certain about whose side he was on. The kitchen clock showed 5:45 a.m. as Ethan measured coffee grounds into the filter. Morning sunlight hadn't yet touched the windows, but years of single fatherhood had trained him to function in these quiet, pre-dawn hours. He cracked eggs into a bowl, whisking them with a splash of milk while bread toasted nearby. "Lily," he called softly up the stairs, "time to get ready, sweetheart." A muffled, "Coming, Dad," floated down from above. Ethan smiled, remembering how it used to take 3 or 4 tries to wake her. These days, she was usually up before him, working on her technical drawings. While the eggs scrambled in the pan, Ethan packed their lunches, turkey sandwich and apple for Lily, his usual peanut butter and soup for himself. The familiar routine felt different now, weighted with new purpose and worry. Lily appeared in the kitchen, her backpack already on. "You seem extra quiet this morning, Dad. Just thinking about work," he said, sliding eggs onto their plates. They ate together, sharing comfortable silence until it was time to leave. The drive to Lily's school was quick, their usual morning ritual. "Have a good day, sweetie. Love you." "Love you too, Dad." She hugged him before heading inside. At the factory, Ethan parked in his regular spot, noticing how differently everything looked now. The familiar brick buildings and machinery felt somehow more significant, knowing what he knew about the corruption within their walls. He settled into his forklift, but today, his eyes caught details they'd missed before. In the shipping area, he watched Mark Thompson, a young black worker, approach the floor supervisor about promised training on the new automated loading system. "Sorry, Thompson," the supervisor said, not looking up from his clipboard. "Position's been filled. Maybe next time." "But sir, you said last month I was next in line for—" "I said maybe next time." The supervisor's tone left no room for discussion. Mark's shoulders slumped as he walked away. Ethan knew Mark had been there 3 years and had an engineering degree. The filled position had gone to the supervisor's nephew, who'd started 2 months ago. By mid-morning, Ethan noticed Sarah Chen, one of their most experienced welders, being called into the office. She'd recently filed a safety report about faulty ventilation in the welding area. Through the office window, he could see her gesturing emphatically while 3 managers shook their heads. When she emerged 30 minutes later, her face was tight with anger. "Written warning," she muttered to her coworker, "for disrupting workplace harmony and making unfounded complaints." During his lunch break, Ethan documented everything in careful detail on his phone using the secure app Marina had given him. The growing list of incidents made his stomach churn. At 2:30, he made his way to the small conference room where Marina waited. She looked polished as always in her navy suit, but he noticed the shadows under her eyes, carefully concealed with makeup. "Thank you for coming, Ethan," she said, closing the door. "What have you observed?" He shared the morning's events, watching her face grow more troubled with each report. She added notes to an already thick file, her fingers tapping anxiously on the desk. "The discrimination is more systematic than I feared," she said, rubbing her temples. "They're targeting anyone who speaks up, especially minorities and women." She flipped through previous pages. "And these safety violations, they're not just cutting corners, they're actively suppressing reports." Ethan noticed her hands trembling slightly as she organized the papers. "Are you okay?" he asked gently. Marina tried to smile but couldn't quite manage it. "I knew there were problems when I took this position, but the scope." She gestured at the growing file. "Every day brings new evidence of how deep this runs. Sometimes I wonder if I'm in over my head." "You're doing the right thing," Ethan said quietly. "These people need someone to stand up for them." She nodded, straightening her shoulders. "You're right, of course, and your help has been invaluable. She paused, collecting herself. "I need to make sure we document everything perfectly. One mistake, one detail out of place, and they'll use it to discredit the whole investigation." Ethan watched her meticulously organize his latest reports, noting dates and times with perfect precision. The weight of responsibility showed in every careful movement, every double-checked detail. "I should get back," he said finally. "My afternoon shift starts soon." Marina looked up, composing herself. "Of course. Thank you, Ethan. Please, stay safe." Walking back to the factory floor, Ethan felt the burden of their shared mission. The familiar hum of machinery and calls of coworkers surrounded him as he climbed back into his forklift, but everything felt heavier now. Each face he passed belonged to someone counting on them to make things right, even if they didn't know it yet. The evening felt heavier than usual as Ethan moved through his small house, checking windows and doors. His hand lingered on the front door's deadbolt, turning it once, then again. The street outside was quiet, too quiet. Shadows from the porch light seemed longer, darker somehow. "Dad?" Lily's voice startled him. "Are you okay?" "Just being careful, sweetheart." He forced a smile. "Time for bed." Sleep came fitfully that night, each creak of the house jolting him awake. By morning, dark circles had formed under his eyes, visible in the bathroom mirror as he got ready for work. The factory hummed with its usual morning energy when Ethan arrived. He'd barely settled into his forklift routine when whispers spread across the floor. Marina Dawson was coming for an inspection. Within minutes, supervisors scrambled to look busy, shuffling papers and barking orders. Marina arrived with 4 senior managers trailing behind her like ducklings. She wore a navy pantsuit that somehow looked both expensive and practical, her heels clicking purposefully on the concrete floor. But it was her expression that caught Ethan's attention, stern determination mixed with barely contained anger. "Can someone explain this?" She stopped at a stack of heavy metal components, pointing to their precarious placement. "These aren't properly secured. One good bump and they could fall on someone." The production supervisor, Dave Winters, stepped forward. We're just temporarily storing them here, ma'am. We'll move them soon. Soon isn't good enough. Marina's voice carried across the floor. Move them now. And I want every similar violation fixed by end of day. She continued her inspection, methodically identifying issues that had been ignored for years. Broken safety rails, missing equipment guards, inadequate ventilation in the welding area. Each discovery seemed to fuel her determination. Ethan tried to focus on his work, but he couldn't help noticing the looks thrown his way. Bob Henderson, the safety coordinator, glared at him with open hostility. Terry from maintenance shook his head disapprovingly. The message was clear. They thought he'd been reporting everything to Marina. During his lunch break, Ethan sat alone in the break room, picking at his sandwich without appetite. Two foremen, Mike Russell and Jim Patterson, settled at a table nearby, speaking in low voices they probably thought wouldn't carry. This wouldn't be happening if someone hadn't started running their mouth, Mike muttered. Yeah, Jim replied, casting a dark look in Ethan's direction. He's got to go before he causes real damage. Can't have a rat in the ranks. Ethan's throat tightened, but he forced himself to keep eating normally, pretending he hadn't heard. When his break ended, he headed to his locker to store his lunch container. As he opened the metal door, a folded piece of paper fluttered to the floor. His hands trembled slightly as he picked it up and unfolded it. 4 words were typed in plain black text. Stay out of this, Cole. The paper crinkled in his clenched fist. He should have felt frightened, and part of him was, but something else burned in his chest. Determination. These threats meant he was making a difference. Marina's inspection today proved that positive changes were happening. Still, anxiety gnawed at him as his shift ended and he walked to his car. The sky had turned a deep slate gray, threatening rain. He pulled out of the parking lot, checking his rearview mirror out of habit. 3 blocks later, he noticed a dark sedan following at a consistent distance. 4 blocks, 5 blocks. The car maintained its position. Ethan's palms grew sweaty on the steering wheel. He made a right turn, then another. The sedan followed. His heart pounded as he drove past his usual turnoff, unwilling to lead them to his house. Finally, after several more blocks, the mysterious car turned away, disappearing down a side street. He released a shaky breath, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. The darkening sky matched his mood as he carefully checked his mirrors again, making sure no other cars followed him home. While navigating the familiar streets of his neighborhood, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted today. Marina's inspection had drawn battle lines, and he found himself squarely on one side. The threatening note in his locker and the following car proved the other side was watching, waiting. His headlights cut through the growing dusk as he turned onto his street, shadows stretching long across the pavement. The simple brick house he shared with Lily had never looked more like a sanctuary. As he pulled into the driveway, a few raindrops began to fall, pattering against his windshield. Ethan's phone buzzed as he was putting away his work boots. A text from Marina lit up the screen. May I stop by? I have Lily's sketch from Sunday. The engineering concept is remarkable. He glanced around his modest home, worn furniture, faded wallpaper, but clean and cared for. After a moment's hesitation, he replied, Of course, we're home. 20 minutes later, Marina's car pulled into the driveway. Through the window, Ethan watched her gather not just a folder, but several grocery bags from her back seat. She looked different outside the office, still elegant, but softer, somehow in casual clothes. You didn't have to bring anything, Ethan said as he opened the door. Marina gave a small, almost shy smile. I wanted to. It's a thank you for everything. She lifted the bags. I thought maybe we could cook dinner? Unless you've already eaten, Dad was just about to make spaghetti. Lily called from the dining table where she sat surrounded by textbooks. But he always makes too much sauce anyway. Hey now, Ethan chuckled, taking some of the bags. My sauce proportions are perfectly fine. In the kitchen, Marina unpacked fresh vegetables, quality pasta, and a loaf of crusty bread. I hope you don't mind, she said quietly. I remember you mentioning Italian was Sarah's specialty. She paused. Is it okay to say her name? Ethan's hand stilled on a tomato. Yes, he said, softly. It's good to hear her name. They worked side by side in the small kitchen, Marina chopping vegetables while Ethan started the sauce. The routine felt oddly natural, passing utensils, sharing counter space, working in comfortable silence, broken by quiet questions about ingredients. I haven't cooked with anyone in years. Marina admitted, sliding diced onions into the pan. My housekeeper usually handles meals. Why not? Ethan asked, stirring the sauce. Marina was quiet for a moment. Work consumed everything. Being a woman in corporate leadership, every mistake is magnified, every success questioned. I learned early to work twice as hard, arrive earlier, stay later. She brushed back a strand of hair. One day I looked up and realized I'd lost touch with normal life. Friends had stopped calling. Family gatherings became quarterly obligations. The sauce simmered as she continued. When I made SVP at 35, a board member asked if I'd slept my way there. When I became CEO, anonymous notes appeared on my desk suggesting I should know my place. Her voice stayed steady, but her hands trembled slightly as she reached for more vegetables. "That's awful," Ethan said softly. "No one should face that kind of treatment." "The isolation was worse than the insults," Marina admitted. "I built walls to protect myself, but they became a prison of sorts. Being alone felt safer than being vulnerable." From the dining room, they heard Lily muttering over her math homework. The familiar sound seemed to ground them both. "Sarah got sick when Lily was 9, Ethan said after a while, his voice gentle. "The medical bills. We lost our savings, then the house. She worried constantly about leaving us with nothing." He stirred the sauce slowly. "After she passed, I promised myself Lily would never feel poor, even if we were. I learned to stretch every dollar, fix things myself, make do." He glanced at the worn linoleum floor. "Some months, choosing between new shoes for Lily or paying the electric bill kept me up at night, but she never knew. She'd show me her drawings, talk about becoming an engineer, and I'd think, somehow, I have to make her dreams possible." Marina touched his arm briefly. "You've done an amazing job with her, Ethan." "She's extraordinary." The simple pasta dinner felt special somehow. Lily chattering about school between bites, Marina asking thoughtful questions about her engineering sketches, Ethan watching them both with quiet contentment. The kitchen was warm with good food and conversation. As they cleared the dishes, Marina helped despite Ethan's protests. Their hands brushed occasionally as they passed plates, each touch carrying a gentle awareness neither acknowledged directly. "I should go," Marina said finally, gathering her purse. "Thank you for dinner and the company." Ethan walked her to the door. "Drive safely." From his front porch, he watched her taillights disappear down the quiet street. The evening air was cool, but he stayed outside a moment longer, aware of an unfamiliar warmth in his chest. A sense of anticipation, of looking forward to the next time she might visit. It both surprised and unsettled him, this gentle pull toward her presence. The porch light cast long shadows across the lawn as Ethan finally turned to go inside, where Lily waited with her homework questions and the kitchen still held the lingering warmth of shared memories and new connections. The morning sun filtered through the factory windows as Ethan maneuvered his forklift between stacks of steel beams. His phone vibrated in his pocket, and during his next pause, he checked the message. It was from Marina. "Please come to my office after your shift. Good news to share." The rest of his shift seemed to crawl by. Ethan found himself checking the clock more often than usual, curiosity building about Marina's message. When the end of shift whistle finally blew, he carefully parked the forklift and made his way to the executive wing. This time, there were no guards at Marina's door. She greeted him with bright eyes and an enthusiasm he hadn't seen before. Her usual composed demeanor had given way to barely contained excitement. "Sit down, Ethan," she said, gesturing to the chair across from her desk. "I've been working round the clock on something big." She spread several documents across her desk, pointing to highlighted sections. "This is our reform initiative for Dawson Industrial. Every observation you've made, every injustice you've reported, it's all addressed here." Ethan leaned forward, scanning the papers. Marina's finger traced along the lines as she explained. "Fair promotion pathways for all workers, regardless of age or background. Major safety investments, new equipment, better training programs, and strong anti-discrimination measures with real teeth in them." She paused, pulling out a familiar sketch from her desk drawer. It was one of Lily's drawings, a detailed design for an improved safety guard on the manufacturing line. "Your daughter's drawings were a revelation, Ethan. The way she sees things, the solutions she envisions, it showed me how much untapped potential we have on our factory floors. Workers who know exactly what needs fixing, if only someone would listen." Ethan felt his throat tighten with pride. "Lily will be amazed to know her drawings helped." "This is cause for celebration," Marina said, standing up. "There's a quiet cafe by the river. Would you join me? I'd like to share more details about the implementation." The Riverside Cafe was a small place with worn wooden tables and large windows overlooking the water. They chose a corner table away from other patrons. Marina ordered coffee while Ethan chose hot chocolate, something he hadn't treated himself to in years. "The board meeting is scheduled for next week," Marina said, warming her hands around her coffee cup. "I've already secured support from key members." "This is really happening, Ethan. How will you handle the pushback?" he asked, thinking of the threatening notes in his locker. "We've documented everything. The safety violations, the discrimination cases, all of it. They can't fight facts." Her confidence was contagious. "Besides, I've learned something important these past weeks. Having allies makes all the difference." A small group of ducks waddled past their window, and Ethan found himself chuckling at their awkward parade. "Lily would love this place," he said. "She's always drawing the birds that come to our backyard." Marina smiled, a real smile that reached her eyes. "She has such a beautiful way of seeing the world." "You've done an amazing job raising her, Ethan." The conversation flowed easily after that. They talked about Lily's future dreams of becoming an engineer, about Marina's early days in the industry, about simple things like favorite books and childhood memories. Ethan found himself laughing at Marina's story about her first day as an intern when she'd accidentally set off the fire alarm trying to operate the coffee machine. The afternoon light softened into evening, and Marina's usual guarded expression had melted into something more genuine. She looked younger somehow, more relaxed. "I can't remember the last time I felt this optimistic about the future of the company," she admitted. "It's nice to feel like things might actually change," Ethan agreed. "Like maybe all the hard work means something." As they prepared to leave, Marina touched his arm lightly. "Thank you, Ethan. Not just for your help with the reforms, but for reminding me why I got into this business in the first place, to make things better for people who deserve a fair chance." The drive home felt different that evening. Ethan noticed the sunset painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, something he hadn't paid attention to in years. For the first time since his wife passed, he felt truly hopeful about the future, not just for himself and Lily, but for all the workers who would benefit from the coming changes. In his driveway, he sat for a moment before going inside, savoring the warmth of possibility that had taken root in his heart. The weight of years of struggling alone seemed lighter somehow, shared with someone who understood and cared enough to make a difference. The morning sunlight streamed through the small kitchen window of the Cole household, casting warm patterns on the worn linoleum floor. Ethan sat across from Lily at their modest breakfast table, both of them sharing a quiet moment over bowls of cornflakes. The familiar sounds of spoons clinking against ceramic filled the comfortable silence between them. "Dad," Lily said, pushing her cereal around thoughtfully. "Something feels different lately. Good different." Ethan smiled, noting how perceptive his daughter had become. "How so?" "Well, you seem happier, less worried." She took another bite, then added, "And I heard some kids at school saying their parents who work at the factory are excited about something big happening today. There are some changes coming to make things better for everyone at work." Ethan explained carefully. "Miss Dawson, Marina, has been working hard on it." Lily's face brightened at the mention of Marina's name. "She's really nice. And she actually listened when I showed her my drawings of how the assembly line could work better." The pride in his daughter's voice made Ethan's heart swell. He checked his watch and stood up, gathering their empty bowls. Time to head out. Big day ahead. The drive to Lily's school was filled with her chatter about her latest engineering sketches. After dropping her off, Ethan headed to the factory, where an unusual energy buzzed through the morning air. News vans lined the parking lot, and a small stage had been set up near the main entrance. Inside, Ethan changed into his work clothes and headed to the factory floor. Small, groups of workers huddled together, their conversations animated with speculation about the upcoming announcement. He could feel the mixture of hope and uncertainty in their voices. "Did you hear they're implementing new safety protocols? Someone said there's going to be a whole new training program." "My supervisor actually smiled this morning. First time in years." At 10 o'clock, everyone was called to gather outside. Ethan found a spot toward the back of the crowd, away from the cameras and reporters. He watched as Marina approached the podium, looking confident in a Navy business suit. Her presence commanded attention, but there was a warmth in her eyes that hadn't been there when he first met her in the park. "Good morning," she began, her voice clear and strong. "Today marks the beginning of a new chapter for Dawson Industrial Holdings and Riverbend Steelworks. We are implementing comprehensive reforms that will transform how we operate and how we treat our most valuable asset, our people." Marina outlined the changes: improved safety measures, fair promotion pathways, anti-discrimination policies, better training programs, and a new system for workers to report concerns without fear of retaliation. Each announcement was met with increasing enthusiasm from the crowd. These reforms, Marina continued, were inspired by the very people they will serve, by those who know this factory best, the workers who bring it to life every day. Your insights, your experiences, and yes, even your creative suggestions have shaped these changes. Ethan noticed how she briefly glanced in his direction, though he knew he was too far back for her to actually see him. He thought of Lily's drawings, now framed in Marina's office, and felt a surge of pride. The press conference continued with questions from reporters, but the real story was in the faces of his coworkers. People who had looked defeated just weeks ago now stood straighter, talked louder, smiled more freely. The shift supervisor, who had been cold to Ethan recently, now nodded respectfully in his direction. After the formal announcement, workers returned to their stations, but the atmosphere had changed. Conversations sparked everywhere, full of optimism and plans. Even the most cynical old-timers seemed cautiously hopeful. "Did you hear about the new training center they're building? Finally, someone's listening to us. My daughter might actually want to work here someday now." Later that afternoon, as Ethan was checking inventory near the loading dock, Marina found him. She had changed from her formal suit into more practical clothing for touring the facility. "Thank you," she said simply, keeping her voice low. Ethan shook his head. "I didn't do anything special. You showed kindness to a stranger crying in a park," Marina replied. "That moment of compassion gave me the strength to fight harder, to push through all the resistance. Your kindness made all of this possible." Before Ethan could respond, she was called away to meet with department heads, but her words stayed with him throughout the rest of his shift. That evening, after a celebratory pizza dinner with Lily, Ethan lay in bed reflecting on the day's events. The threatening notes in his locker seemed like a distant memory now. The suspicious glances had been replaced with respectful nods. Most importantly, he could look his daughter in the eye and feel proud of the example he was setting. As sleep began to settle over him, Ethan felt something he hadn't experienced in years: genuine optimism about the future. Life was finally turning a corner, and for the first time in a long while, that corner led somewhere bright. The sharp rapping jolted Ethan from his sleep. His eyes snapped open, heart thumping as the aggressive knocking continued. Through his bedroom window, the early morning sun cast long shadows across his room. He glanced at his bedside clock. 6:47 a.m. The pounding came again, more insistent this time. Ethan hurried down the hallway, checking Lily's room as he passed. She was still asleep, undisturbed by the noise. He reached the front door just as another round of knocks began. Two men in dark suits stood on his porch, their faces stern and official. The taller one held up a badge showing Dawson Industrial Holdings Security Division logo. "Mr. Cole?" the taller man said, his voice clipped and professional. "I'm Officer Reynolds. This is Officer Martinez. We need you to come with us immediately." Ethan's stomach dropped. "What's this about?" "You're suspended effective immediately, pending investigation into serious allegations," Martinez stated, pulling out an official-looking document. "We have evidence of deliberate equipment tampering." The words hit Ethan like a physical blow. "That's impossible. I would never." "These photos suggest otherwise," Reynolds cut in, presenting a manila envelope. Inside were several clear photographs showing what appeared to be Ethan accessing control panels on various pieces of equipment, though Ethan knew he had never done any such thing. His hands trembled as he looked through the expertly doctored images. "These are fake. Someone set me up." "That will be for the investigation to determine," Martinez replied coldly. "For now, you are barred from entering any Dawson Industrial Holdings property. Security will escort you if you need to retrieve any personal belongings." Ethan's mind raced to the corrupt managers who had been eyeing him with growing hostility. This had to be their work, a calculated strike against both him and Marina's reforms. "My daughter," he managed. "I need to tell her what's happening. You have 30 minutes to make arrangements," Reynolds stated. "We'll wait here." Ethan closed the door and leaned against it, his legs weak. How would he explain this to Lily? How would he pay the bills? The weight of it all pressed down on his chest until he could barely breathe. He made his way to Lily's room and gently woke her, explaining as calmly as he could that there was a problem at work he needed to sort out. Her worried eyes made his heart ache, but he assured her everything would be okay. The morning passed in a blur of paperwork and stern warnings. By noon, Ethan sat at his kitchen table, staring at the suspension notice while his mind spun with fear and anger. He knew exactly who was behind this, the same people who had been leaving threatening notes, the ones Marina had warned him about. His phone buzzed. A text from Lily. His heart stopped as he read her message. "Dad, someone left a note in my locker. I'm scared." Ethan rushed to pick her up from school, finding her pale and shaking in the office. The note was simple but chilling. "Back off, or your dad pays." Seeing his daughter trembling, clutching that threatening piece of paper, something broke inside Ethan. This wasn't just about him anymore. These people were targeting his child. That evening, as darkness settled over their small house, a soft knock came at the back door. Marina stood there, wearing casual clothes and a baseball cap as a disguise. Her face was drawn with concern and exhaustion. "I'm so sorry, Ethan," she whispered as he let her in. "I had to suspend you. It was the only way to protect you while we gather evidence against them." They sat at the kitchen table, speaking in hushed tones while Lily did homework in her room. "They're getting desperate," Marina explained, running a hand through her hair. "The reforms are gaining traction, and they're losing control. This attack on you, it's their way of trying to discredit everything we've built." "They threatened Lily," Ethan said, his voice rough with emotion. They crossed a line. Marina reached across the table and squeezed his hand. "I have my best people gathering evidence of their corruption. We'll expose them, Ethan. But until then, you need to lay low. The suspension protects you. They think they've won." After Marina left, Ethan sat on the edge of his bed in the darkness. The weight of the day pressed down on him like a physical thing. His job, his reputation, his daughter's safety, everything he'd worked so hard to build felt like it was crumbling around him. But as he listened to Lily's quiet movements in the next room, his despair hardened into determination. He might be down, but he wasn't out. Whatever it took, he would protect his daughter and see justice done. These people had underestimated both him and Marina. They would soon learn that was a serious mistake. The Sunday morning sun crept through Ethan's kitchen window, casting weak shadows across the counter, where he mechanically cracked eggs into a bowl. His hands trembled slightly as he whisked them, trying to keep the scraping of the fork against the ceramic from being too loud. Lily would be up soon, and he needed to maintain a brave face. Dark circles shadowed his eyes after a night of tossing and turning. Every time he'd started to drift off, the weight of his suspension and the threats against Lily had yanked him back to consciousness. Now, as he moved around the kitchen preparing breakfast, each clink of plates and pans seemed unnaturally loud in the quiet house. "Morning, Dad." Lily's voice startled him. She stood in the doorway, already dressed, her dark hair pulled back in a neat ponytail. "Hey, sweetheart." Ethan managed a smile he didn't feel. "I'm making your favorite French toast with cinnamon." Lily settled at their small kitchen table, watching him with worried eyes. "You look tired. Just didn't sleep great," he said, dipping bread into the egg mixture. Nothing to worry about. The sizzle of bread hitting the hot pan filled the silence between them. Ethan focused on the cooking, grateful for the simple task that kept his hands busy. He sprinkled cinnamon over each piece as it cooked, just the way Lily liked it. As they ate, Ethan's mind wandered through the events of the past. Weeks. From that first moment of sharing his lunch with Marina in the park, to becoming her trusted observer, to watching her launch reforms that could have changed everything. Now here he sat, suspended and accused, while somewhere the real culprits probably celebrated their scheme's success. "Dad?" Lily's voice pulled him back. "The syrup is overflowing." Ethan quickly righted the bottle he'd been absently tipping. "Sorry, got lost in thought there." After breakfast, Lily retreated to her room to work on homework, while Ethan tried to keep himself occupied. He washed dishes, did laundry, organized the garage, anything to keep his mind from spinning through worst-case scenarios. But, in quiet moments, fear crept back in. What if he couldn't clear his name? What if he lost his job permanently? How would he support Lily? The afternoon light was fading when his phone buzzed with a text from Marina. "Library, meeting room B, 8 p.m. Come alone. Important." Ethan's heart rate quickened. He checked the time, 6:45 p.m. The public library stayed open late on Sundays, and its meeting rooms were often used by community groups. It was a smart choice for a discreet meeting. "Lily?" He called upstairs. "I need to run an errand. Will you be okay here for a couple hours? Door's locked. No answering if anyone knocks?" "I'll be fine, Dad," she answered. I've got that history paper to finish anyway. The evening air had turned chilly as Ethan drove to the library. He parked in the back lot, away from the main entrance, and slipped in through the side door. Meeting room B was tucked away in a quiet corner of the building's lower level. Marina was already there when he arrived, her usually perfect appearance showing signs of strain. Papers were spread across the table in front of her, and she looked up as he entered, her eyes filled with determination. "Thank you for coming," she said softly as he took a seat across from her. "I've been working non-stop since yesterday to gather evidence." "Marina, you don't have to." "Yes, I do." Her voice was firm. "What they're doing to you is wrong, and I won't let them destroy a good man to protect their corruption." She pushed several documents toward him. "Look at these." Ethan leaned forward, examining the papers. They were financial reports, maintenance logs, and email exchanges, all showing suspicious patterns. Safety inspection reports had been altered. Maintenance requests had been ignored. Workers who spoke up had been systematically silenced through transfers or terminations. "These go back years," Marina explained, her voice tight with controlled anger. "The same group of executives appears in connection with every incident. They've built this network of corruption so gradually that no one noticed the pattern until now." She reached across the table, briefly touching his hand. "Ethan, I promise you, I will not rest until we expose the truth. Your suspension." Her voice caught slightly. "It's killing me that I had to do that to you, but it was the only way to keep you safe while we gather proof." The sincerity in her eyes made Ethan's chest tighten. This powerful woman who'd faced down corporate boards and fought discrimination his whole career was fighting for him now, believing in him without hesitation. "I know this isn't just about clearing my name," he said quietly. "This is about all the workers who've been hurt by their schemes." Marina nodded, a sad smile touching her lips. "That's exactly why I trust you, Ethan. You always see the bigger picture, the human cost. When you shared your lunch with me that day in the park, you didn't know who I was. You just saw someone in pain and wanted to help." They spent the next hour going through the documents, Marina explaining the connections she'd uncovered. By the time Ethan left the library, his mind was swimming with information, but his spirit felt lighter than it had since the suspension. The drive home was quiet, streetlights casting, intermittent pools of light across his dashboard. He was exhausted, but Marina's unwavering belief in him had restored something he'd been losing: hope. Whatever came next, he wasn't facing it alone. Pulling into his driveway, Ethan saw Lily's bedroom light still on. Despite everything weighing on him, knowing she was safe inside, having Marina in his corner gave him strength. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but for now, in this moment, he felt ready to face them. The morning air held a biting chill as Ethan stood at the end of his driveway with Lily, waiting for her school bus. His daughter hugged her backpack close, her eyes darting up and down the street more than usual. The threat left at her locker had shaken them both. "You've got your phone?" Ethan asked softly, though he'd already checked twice. "Yes, Dad." Lily managed a small smile. "And it's fully charged. And you'll call right away if anything seems wrong," she finished. "I promise." The yellow bus rounded the corner, and Ethan's heart clenched. He pulled Lily into a tight hug, breathing in the familiar scent of her strawberry shampoo. "I love you, sweetheart. Love you too, Dad." She squeezed back before climbing aboard. Ethan watched until the bus disappeared, then drove across town to meet Marina. The warehouse sat in an industrial park, its faded brick walls and dusty windows making it look abandoned. Two unmarked security vehicles were parked near the entrance, Marina's people, he knew. Inside, the space smelled of old paper and metal shelving. Row after row of filing cabinets stretched into the shadows. Marina stood at a fold-out table, her blazer draped over a chair, sleeves rolled up as she sorted through stacks of documents. "Thank you for coming," she said, looking up. The shadows under her eyes matched his own. "I've been here since dawn. There's so much, Ethan." He joined her at the table, scanning the organized chaos of papers. "Where do we start?" "Payroll records from the past 5 years." Marina handed him a thick folder. "Look for any patterns and bonuses, especially around dates when safety violations were reported." They worked in focused silence, broken only by the rustling of papers and occasional murmurs of discovery. Ethan's experience on the factory floor gave him insight into suspicious timing, safety write-ups that disappeared, equipment repairs that were logged but never completed. Around mid-morning, 3 people arrived carrying laptops and briefcases. Marina introduced them as her most trusted investigators: Sarah Chin, a forensic accountant; Marcus Rodriguez, a safety compliance specialist; and David Turner, a former FBI agent who specialized in corporate fraud. "Everything we find needs to be documented perfectly," Marina explained, "triple-checked and unimpeachable." The team spread out across several tables. Sarah cross-referenced financial records, while Marcus examined maintenance logs. David built a timeline of events, connecting seemingly unrelated incidents into a clear pattern of corruption. Ethan recognized names that kept appearing: Thompson in maintenance, who always seemed to lose safety complaints; Roberts in accounting, whose signature authorized suspicious payments; Mitchell in HR, who blocked minority promotions while fast-tracking his friends. "Look at this," he said, holding up a maintenance log. "The date they claim I sabotaged the equipment? According to this, that machine was already tagged for repairs 3 days earlier. Thompson signed off on it being fixed, but it never was." Marina came to examine the document. "And here's the purchase order for parts that were never installed." She placed another paper beside his. "They were billed, but the machine stayed broken until they needed someone to blame." As afternoon stretched toward evening, the evidence mounted. Sarah uncovered a pattern of fake invoices used to siphon money into private accounts. Marcus found systematic falsification of safety certifications. David connected it all to the managers who had targeted Ethan. "They didn't count on anyone looking this closely," Marina said, satisfaction evident in her voice. "They got sloppy, thinking no one would challenge them." The warehouse grew darker as the sun set, their work illuminated by harsh fluorescent lights. Finally, they had assembled 3 copies of a comprehensive file: one for Marina, one for their lawyers, and one secured off-site. "This proves your innocence," Marina told Ethan, "and their guilt." They gathered their coats as the investigation team packed up their equipment. Through the warehouse windows, Ethan could see stars appearing in the darkening sky. Tomorrow would bring confrontation, but tonight they had truth on their side. The security team did a sweep of the parking lot before Marina and Ethan walked out together. The night air had grown colder, and their breath formed clouds in the darkness. They stood for a moment between their cars, both understanding that everything would change once they used what they'd found. "Thank you," Ethan said quietly, "for believing in me." Marina's reply was firm. "Truth matters. Justice matters. You taught me that in the park, remember? Sometimes the simplest acts of kindness reveal who people really are." Morning sunlight filtered through the windows of the rented conference room, casting long shadows across the polished wooden table. Ethan sat beside Marina, both nursing paper cups of coffee, while 3 investigators arranged stacks of documents at the far end. The room had been carefully swept for surveillance devices, a precaution that would have seemed absurd to Ethan just weeks ago. "Let's review the sequence," Marina said, her voice steady but tired. Dark circles under her eyes betrayed nights of little sleep, though her posture remained impeccable. She spread out a timeline on the table between them. "The board meeting is scheduled for Thursday. At 9 a.m., we'll need everything absolutely watertight." One of the investigators, a sharp-eyed woman named Reynolds, stepped forward with a leather portfolio. "We've organized the financial records chronologically. The pattern of fraud becomes clear when you follow the money through these shell companies." She laid out several spreadsheets, each highlighted in different colors. Ethan leaned forward, recognizing names and dates. "These match perfectly with the safety inspection reports I witnessed being altered." His finger traced a particular entry. "Right here, the day Thompson ordered Jake to sign off on that faulty equipment." Marina nodded grimly. "We'll present the evidence in 3 phases." She turned to face Ethan directly. "Your testimony will be crucial. Are you absolutely certain you're prepared for this? There's no shame in stepping back." "I'm in," Ethan said firmly. "Those men threatened my daughter. I won't back down now." A gentle knock at the door made everyone tense. Reynolds moved to answer it, checking through the peephole first. She opened the door to reveal 2 familiar faces: Sam Martinez and Howard Chin, both 20-year veterans of the factory floor. "Sorry, we're late," Sam said quietly, removing his worn baseball cap. "Had to make sure nobody followed us." Howard nodded solemnly. "We've got stories you need to hear. Documentation, too." He patted his messenger bag. "Been keeping records for years. Never thought we'd have a chance to use them." Marina gestured for them to sit. "Thank you for coming forward. I know the risks you're taking." Sam pulled out a thick manila envelope. "Got photos of the segregated training sessions they tried to hide." Dates, times, supervisor names, all of it. His hands trembled slightly. My nephew quit last year because of how they treated him. Couldn't take it anymore. Howard added his own folder to the growing pile. And here's proof of the kickback scheme and maintenance contracts. They've been forcing us to use suppliers that overcharge by 40%, then splitting the difference. Ethan felt a surge of pride in his co-workers' courage. These men had families too, mortgages to pay, yet here they were, standing up for what was right. Marina's lawyer, Sarah Kessler, arrived shortly after, carrying her own briefcase of documents. She was a composed woman in her 50s who radiated quiet competence. I've prepared preliminary statements for each witness, she explained, distributing folders. Please review them carefully. We need to be precise and consistent. Mr. Cole, she continued, turning to Ethan, I'll be representing you personally through this process. Miss Dawson has arranged full coverage of any legal expenses you might incur. That's not necessary, Ethan began, but Marina cut him off gently. It absolutely is, she insisted. You've risked everything to help make this right. Let me do this much at least. The morning stretched into afternoon as they refined their strategy. Marina would open with the financial evidence, establishing the pattern of corruption. Sam and Howard would testify about discrimination and safety violations, their long service lending crucial credibility. Ethan's testimony would come last, tying everything together with his recent observations and the attempted frame-up. Remember, Sarah advised, stick to facts. No speculation, no emotional language, just what you saw, heard, and documented. Reynolds and her team consolidated the evidence into clear, chronological exhibits. Years of corruption were distilled into devastating timelines and charts, each allegation supported by multiple sources of proof. We'll have copies for every board member, Marina explained. They won't be able to look away from this. As the sun began to decline, they gathered their materials carefully. Sam and Howard left first, taking different routes home. The investigators packed their files into secure cases, each containing only part of the evidence. As a precaution, before leaving, Marina touched Ethan's arm lightly. Get some rest tonight. Tomorrow, we'll do a full rehearsal of the presentations. Ethan nodded, gathering his notes. The weight of Thursday's confrontation loomed before them, but for the first time since his suspension, he felt truly confident. The truth was assembled, organized, and ready to be revealed. Whatever came next, they would face it together. They dispersed quietly, carrying their pieces of the puzzle, each preparing in their own way for the coming challenge. The conference room fell silent. Afternoon shadows stretching across the table where justice had been carefully, methodically assembled. The morning air felt crisp and clean as Ethan hugged Lily goodbye at the school entrance. Have a great day, sweetheart, he said, watching her join her friends. His heart ached, knowing she still carried worry about the threats, but her brave smile gave him strength. 20 minutes later, Ethan entered Marina's office building through a side entrance. Two security guards he recognized nodded respectfully as they escorted him to the executive floor. The hall seemed unusually quiet, with employees speaking in hushed tones behind partially closed doors. Marina's office had been transformed. The elegant furniture remained, but now screens displayed security camera feeds from throughout the building. A guard stood outside while another monitored the feeds from a small desk in the corner. Good morning, Ethan, Marina said, rising from behind her desk. She wore a crisp navy suit, her silver hair perfectly styled, but exhaustion showed in the shadows under her eyes. Thank you for coming early. We need to make sure we're both completely prepared. Ethan nodded, setting his worn leather briefcase on a chair. I reviewed my notes again last night. Every date, every incident, it's all clear in my mind. Marina moved to a whiteboard covered with timeline details and executive names. Let's walk through it again. The board meeting starts at 10 tomorrow morning. I'll open with the financial evidence. She pointed to specific dates. Then we'll present the pattern of discriminatory practices, followed by the safety violations. And that's when I speak? Ethan asked, his voice steady despite his racing heart. Yes, your first-hand observations will give human context to the data. Marina's expression softened. Your honesty is our strongest asset, Ethan. The board needs to see the real impact on real people. They spent the next hour rehearsing. Marina delivered her presentation with practiced precision, while Ethan worked on sharing his experiences clearly and calmly. He described the threatening notes, the workplace discrimination he'd witnessed, and the pattern of intimidation that had emerged. Remember, Marina advised. Some board members may try to rattle you with aggressive questions. Just stay focused on the truth. Around noon, they heard increased activity in the hallway. Marina checked the security feeds. The executives are gathering for their regular lunch meeting, she observed. Look at their body language. They know something's coming. Through the monitors, they watched as several senior managers huddled in conversation, their gestures agitated. One repeatedly checked his phone while another kept glancing over his shoulder. They're scared, Ethan said quietly. Marina nodded. They should be. We have proof of every illegal action, every covered-up accident, every falsified report. Their whole corrupt system is about to collapse. Throughout the afternoon, the tension in the building grew thicker. Employees whispered in break rooms and stairwells. Phones rang constantly in executive offices. Several times, they noticed small groups of managers meeting in conference rooms with their attorneys. They're trying to build a defense, Marina explained, watching the frantic activity. But it's too late. We have documents with their signatures, testimony from multiple witnesses, and a clear money trail. As they continued preparing, Ethan noticed Marina occasionally touching a small silver locket she wore, a nervous gesture he'd never seen before. During a break, she caught him looking and smiled sadly. It was my mother's, she explained. She always told me to fight for what's right, no matter how hard it gets. I didn't fully understand what she meant until now. Ethan shared a gentle smile. She would be proud of you, Marina. What you're doing here, it matters. It will help so many people. Late afternoon brought more commotion as several executives were seen hurriedly leaving the building with boxes and briefcases. Trying to hide evidence, Marina said grimly, but we already have copies of everything. Around 5 o'clock, they took a final pass through their presentation materials. The setting sun cast long shadows across Marina's office as they organized their documents into folders. Are you ready for tomorrow? Marina asked softly. Ethan considered the question carefully. Yes, he replied. Not because I'm not scared, I am, but because it's right. Marina touched her mother's locket again and nodded. Everything changes tomorrow, she said quietly. Everything changes, Ethan echoed, gathering his belongings as dusk settled over the city outside. The security guards appeared to escort him out. As he left, Ethan glimpsed Marina standing at her window, straight-backed and resolute in the fading light. Tomorrow would bring whatever it would bring, but tonight they both knew they stood on the right side of truth. The executive conference room buzzed with tense energy as board members filed in, taking their seats around the massive mahogany table. Morning sunlight streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows, casting long shadows across the plush carpet. Ethan sat quietly in a chair near the door, his hands clasped tightly in his lap to hide their slight tremor. Marina stood at the head of the table, her navy suit crisp and professional, her posture straight and commanding. She arranged her documents with practiced precision as the last few board members settled in. The accused executives sat clustered together, halfway down the table, their faces masks of practiced indifference. Good morning, Marina began, her voice steady and clear. We're here today to address serious allegations of corruption and misconduct within our company. She activated a projector, and the first slide appeared on the wall behind her. What you're about to see represents months of investigation and evidence gathering. Page by page, Marina laid out her case. Spreadsheets revealed systematic wage suppression targeting minority workers. Safety inspection reports showed deliberate falsification of data. Internal emails exposed coordinated efforts to silence whistleblowers through intimidation. These discrepancies in our safety protocols, Marina explained, highlighting specific dates and signatures, show a pattern of deliberate negligence that put our workers at risk while pocketing the funds meant for essential upgrades. The board members leaned forward, examining the evidence with growing concern. One of the accused executives shifted uncomfortably in his chair, while another loosened his tie. Mr. Cole, Marina said, turning to Ethan, would you please share your observations from the factory floor? Ethan stood, his voice finding strength as he spoke. I witnessed supervisors forcing senior workers into early retirement through targeted harassment. I saw qualified minority employees denied training opportunities that were freely given to others. He described specific incidents, dates, and names, his testimony matching perfectly with the documented evidence. The lead investigator stepped forward next, a stern-faced woman with graying hair. Our team has confirmed Mr. Cole's accounts through multiple independent sources. She presented additional documentation, bank records, showing suspicious transfers, tampered maintenance logs, and evidence of the false sabotage charges against Ethan. Furthermore, she continued, we've uncovered proof that these executives orchestrated the threats against Mr. Cole and his daughter. She displayed photographs of meetings between the corrupt managers and known intimidation groups, along with financial transactions linking them directly to the harassment campaign. One of the accused executives suddenly stood, his face red. This is ridiculous. You can't possibly. Sit down, Mr. Harrison, the board chairman interrupted firmly. You'll have your chance to respond, but the evidence speaks volumes. The room grew still as the final pieces of evidence were presented. Marina's voice remained steady as she concluded, the pattern is clear. These individuals have systematically undermined our company's values, endangered our workers, and attempted to destroy an innocent man's life to protect their schemes. The board chairman called for a vote, one by one, hands raised in unanimous agreement. In light of this overwhelming evidence, he announced, the board moves to immediately terminate the employment of the identified executives and pursue full legal prosecution. Security personnel entered the room, positioning themselves near the accused. The chairman turned to Ethan. Mr. Cole, you are hereby cleared of all charges. The board extends its sincere apologies for the distress you and your family have endured. The corrupt executives were led from the room, their former authority stripped away. As they passed through the door, Marina caught Ethan's eye. In that brief moment, her professional facade softened, relief and gratitude evident in her gentle smile. The morning sun had climbed higher now, washing the conference room in bright light as justice finally prevailed. The morning sun painted the sky in brilliant shades of orange and pink as crowds gathered outside Riverbend Steelworks. News vans lined the parking lot, their satellite dishes reaching toward the heavens like metal flowers. Workers, both current and retired, stood shoulder to shoulder with local residents and journalists, all waiting for Marina Dawson's press conference to begin. Ethan Cole stood at the back of the assembled crowd, his hands in the pockets of his freshly pressed suit, a gift from Marina that still felt strange to wear. He watched as technicians made final adjustments to the microphones on the temporary stage that had been erected in front of the factory's main entrance. Lily stood beside him, practically bouncing with excitement in her new dress. She clutched her sketchbook close to her chest, the same one that had unknowingly helped inspire some of Marina's reforms. Her long brown hair was neatly braided, and her eyes sparkled with pride as she looked up at her father. Look at all the TV cameras, Dad, she whispered, tugging at his sleeve. Are you nervous about being up there? Ethan smiled down at his daughter. I'm not going up there, sweetie. This is Miss Dawson's moment. A hush fell over the crowd as Marina emerged from the building's main entrance. She wore a steel gray suit that seemed to capture the essence of the factory behind her, but her smile was warm as she approached the podium. Several board members followed, taking their seats in chairs arranged behind her. Good morning, Marina began, her voice carrying clearly across the gathered crowd. Today marks not just a new chapter for Dawson Industrial Holdings, but a fundamental transformation in how we view our responsibility to our workers and our community. The crowd listened intently as Marina outlined the comprehensive reforms, new safety protocols, fair promotion policies, anti-discrimination measures, and improved benefits packages. Each announcement drew increasingly enthusiastic applause from the workers. These changes, Marina continued, would not have been possible without the courage and integrity of one person who reminded me what true leadership looks like. She paused, scanning the crowd until she found Ethan. Mr. Ethan Cole, would you please join me? Ethan felt his face flush as heads turned in his direction. Lily gave him a gentle push forward, beaming with pride. He made his way through the parting crowd, conscious of every step, every face that turned to watch him. As he climbed the steps to the stage, Marina extended her hand, but instead of a handshake, she guided him to stand beside her at the podium. Many of you know Ethan as a forklift operator, a single father, and a colleague. What you may not know is that his simple act of kindness toward a stranger, sharing his lunch with someone in distress, set in motion the changes we're announcing today. The crowd murmured with interest as Marina continued. Ethan demonstrated the very values we want to embed in our corporate culture: compassion, integrity, and courage in the face of intimidation. That's why I'm pleased to announce that Ethan Cole will be taking on a new role as our Director of Workforce Relations. Applause erupted from the crowd. Ethan saw several of his coworkers whistling and cheering, Even those who had once been cold toward him were now clapping, seeming to understand at last what had really been happening. In this new position, Marina explained, Ethan will ensure that our reforms are properly implemented and that every worker's voice is heard. He will report directly to me, and together we will build a workplace where fairness and dignity are not just promises, but daily realities. From his new vantage point on the stage, Ethan could see Lily in the crowd, her face glowing with joy and pride. She had never seen her father recognized like this, never witnessed others acknowledging what she had always known about him. Marina went on to detail more specific changes, new training programs, modernized safety equipment, and a worker advocacy council. Each announcement was met with enthusiasm from the crowd, especially from the veteran employees who had waited years for such reforms. As the press conference concluded, workers surged forward to shake Ethan's hand or pat him on the back. Some shared quiet words of gratitude, while others simply nodded in respect. The local reporters clamored for comments, but Marina skillfully managed their questions, allowing Ethan to step back from the spotlight he never sought. After the crowd began to disperse, Lily rushed forward to hug her father tightly. "I'm so proud of you, Dad," she whispered against his chest. Marina joined them, her professional demeanor softening into a warm smile. "Shall we?" she asked, gesturing toward the building's entrance. Together, they walked away from the dispersing crowd and the media trucks, their footsteps in perfect sync. As they passed through the factory gates, Ethan felt the weight of the past few weeks lifting from his shoulders. The morning sun felt warmer somehow, the air fresher, the future brighter. For the first time since losing his wife, he felt truly at peace, knowing he had not only survived, but had helped create positive change for others. They paused at the entrance, where the factory's aged brick walls seemed to glow in the morning light. Marina touched his arm gently. "Ready for your first day in the new role?" Ethan looked at his daughter's bright face, then at Marina's encouraging smile, and nodded. The sense of peace that filled him was something he hadn't experienced in years, a feeling of being exactly where he was meant to be, doing exactly what he was meant to do. Golden sunlight poured through the tall windows of Ethan's new office, painting warm, dancing patterns across the polished mahogany desk that still felt too grand for a man who had spent years operating heavy machinery. The morning light caught the brass nameplate that read Ethan Cole, Director of Workforce Relations, words that sometimes made him do a double take when he saw them. The room carried the quiet dignity of executive leadership with its rich wooden furniture, plush ergonomic chair that seemed to cradle him like a gentle embrace, and the pristine whiteboard where he now mapped out training schedules instead of delivery routes. A full week had passed since Marina had offered him this position, and Ethan was still adjusting to the profound shift in his daily reality. The transformation felt surreal at times, like stepping into someone else's life, yet somehow it fit better than he'd ever imagined possible. He ran his weathered fingers along the smooth surface of his desk, the wood cool and solid beneath his touch. These same hands had gripped forklift controls for countless hours, had worked through blisters and calluses, had known the honest ache of manual labor. Now they signed documents that could change people's lives for the better. The contrast wasn't lost on him, and it filled him with a deep sense of bold responsibility that both humbled and motivated him. A framed photograph of Lily occupied a place of honor beside his computer monitor. In the picture, she was laughing at something just beyond the camera's view, her bright smile radiating the pure joy that had slowly returned to her features over these past weeks. That smile reminded him every single day why all the struggles, all the uncertainty, all the moments of doubt had been worth enduring. The peaceful morning quiet was gently interrupted by a soft knock on his door. "Come in," Ethan called out, automatically straightening the navy blue tie around his neck. Another small adjustment he was still getting used to, though it no longer felt like a noose the way it had that first day. Sarah Chen stepped through the doorway, her arms full with a thick stack of training applications that seemed to grow heavier with each passing day. She had been one of the workers who'd faced the worst discrimination before the company's reforms, often overlooked despite her sharp mind and dedicated work ethic. Now her eyes sparkled with the kind of enthusiasm that comes from finally being seen and valued. "Mr. Cole," she said, setting the papers on his desk with obvious pride, "we've got 30 more sign-ups for the Advanced Machinery Certification Program since yesterday morning. People who never thought they'd get a real chance are finally stepping forward. Some of them have been working here for over a decade, just waiting for an opportunity like this." Ethan smiled warmly as he accepted the applications, feeling the weight of dreams and hopes contained within each filled-out form. That's exactly what we wanted to see, Sarah. Every single application represents someone ready to grow and contribute even more. He paused, then added gently, and please, it's still just Ethan. That hasn't changed. Sarah's face softened with appreciation before she headed back to her duties, leaving Ethan alone with the stack of applications. He began reviewing them carefully, and familiar names jumped out at him from the pages. Men and women he'd worked alongside for years on the factory floor. There was Robert Martinez, a veteran worker with 23 years of experience who'd been repeatedly passed over for advancement opportunities. Maria Santos, a young, eager employee whose innovative suggestions had been dismissed simply because of her age and gender. James Washington, a skilled technician whose expertise was respected by his peers but had never been formally recognized by management. The sight of these names, accompanied by their carefully written aspirations and goals, filled Ethan with a quiet satisfaction that ran deeper than any personal achievement he'd ever experienced. Later that morning, he made his way through the factory floor, his footsteps echoing differently now than they had when he was just another worker among many. This time, he walked not as someone observing the machinery and processes, but as someone who actually had the power and authority to implement meaningful changes. The transformation was profound, and he could feel it in every interaction. Workers nodded respectfully as he passed, but it wasn't the fearful deference they'd once shown to management. Instead, their gestures carried genuine warmth and recognition. Some stopped their task entirely to approach him, sharing concerns they'd never felt safe voicing before, offering innovative ideas they'd kept to themselves for years, or simply expressing gratitude for the changes already taking place. The entire atmosphere of the factory floor had undergone a remarkable transformation. Where tension and fear had once hung in the air like a thick fog, there was now a sense of cautious but growing optimism. Conversations flowed more freely, laughter could be heard echoing off the high ceilings, and there was an energy of possibility that seemed to pulse through every department. "Hey, Ethan!" called out. Miguel Rivera, a talented machinist whose skills were legendary among the workers, but who had been systematically denied promotions for reasons that had nothing to do with his abilities. He jogged over with the kind of open enthusiasm that would have been unthinkable just weeks ago. "That new safety training program you implemented, it's already making a real difference out here. We had a near miss yesterday with some heavy equipment, but because of the new protocols you put in place, everyone knew exactly what to do. Nobody panicked, nobody got hurt, and we handled it like the professionals we are." Ethan paused in his rounds to chat with Miguel, immediately noticing how the man spoke freely and confidently now, without the nervous glances over his shoulder that had once been a sad but common sight. His posture was straighter, his voice stronger, and there was a light in his eyes that spoke of renewed pride in his work. As they talked about safety improvements and efficiency gains, more workers began to gather around them, drawn by the rare opportunity to speak directly with someone in leadership who actually listened to their perspectives. It was the kind of informal gathering that would have been quickly dispersed by previous management, but now it represented exactly the kind of open communication that was transforming the workplace culture. "The mentorship program is working great too," added Jenny Patterson, a recently hired apprentice whose eagerness to learn was matched only by her natural mechanical aptitude. Having experienced workers officially recognized as trainers and mentors means we're learning from the absolute best, and they're finally getting the credit and compensation they deserve for all their knowledge and expertise. The conversation continued for several more minutes, with workers sharing their experiences, voicing their appreciation for the changes, and offering additional suggestions for improvements. Ethan listened carefully to each comment, making mental notes and asking follow-up questions that showed his genuine interest in their perspectives. Around noon, Marina appeared in his office doorway like a welcome ray of sunshine, carrying 2 brown paper bags from the local deli they'd both discovered and fallen in love with. "Lunch?" she asked, her professional demeanor softening into the warm smile that never failed to make his heart skip slightly. It had become their unofficial daily routine over the past week, sharing meals while discussing progress, challenges, and plans for the future. They settled into the small seating area by the window, where the afternoon sunshine streamed through the glass and warmed their shoulders like a gentle blessing. Marina unpacked sandwiches, chips, and drinks, creating an impromptu picnic in the middle of their busy day. The simple ritual had become something they both looked forward to, a quiet oasis of connection in their demanding schedules. "The board met this morning," Marina said as she passed him, a turkey sandwich wrapped in crisp white paper. "And they're genuinely impressed with your implementation of the training programs. The numbers speak for themselves. Efficiency is up 12%, workplace accidents are down by nearly 30%, and employee satisfaction scores have improved dramatically." Ethan unwrapped his lunch thoughtfully, still sometimes amazed by the measurable impact of treating people with basic dignity and respect. "It's incredible what people can accomplish when they're given a fair chance and treated like the skilled professionals they are," he said, shaking his head slightly in wonder. Marina's eyes softened as she watched him, seeing the humble man who continued to deflect credit for his remarkable achievements. "You make it sound so simple, Ethan." "Maybe that's because it should be," he replied quietly, meeting her gaze with the honesty that had drawn her to him from the very beginning. "People want to do good work. They want to contribute something meaningful. They just need someone to believe in them and give them the tools to succeed." They shared a moment of comfortable silence, each lost in their own thoughts about how much had changed and how much potential still lay ahead. The easy companionship between them had grown stronger with each passing day, built on shared values and mutual respect that ran deeper than either had expected. "How's Lily adjusting to her advanced placement classes?" Marina asked, genuinely interested in every aspect of his daughter's progress and well-being. Ethan's entire face transformed when he talked about his daughter, lighting up with the pure pride and love of a devoted father. "She's absolutely thriving, Marina. That specialized engineering program you recommended, she talks about it constantly. The concepts, the projects, the possibilities. Her teacher says she has genuine talent, real potential for innovation." "I knew she would excel if given the right opportunities," Marina said, her voice warm with sincere affection for the remarkable young woman who had become like family to her. "Her latest technical drawings and designs for improving factory workflow are genuinely remarkable. We should seriously consider having her work reviewed by our patent attorneys." After lunch, Ethan conducted his first official training seminar as Director of Workforce Relations. The conference room was packed beyond capacity, with workers eager to learn about the new certification paths and advancement opportunities that were finally available to them. Every chair was filled, and additional workers stood along the walls, all listening intently as he explained the various programs, requirements, and timelines. "Every single person in this room has valuable skills, experience, and knowledge to offer," he told them, his voice steady and sincere as he looked out at the sea of attentive faces. "From this day forward, advancement and recognition will be based purely on merit, effort, dedication, and ability. Absolutely nothing else. Your background, your accent, your age, your gender, none of those things will ever again determine your potential for growth in this company." The response was immediate and powerful. He could see hope dawning on faces that had long ago resigned themselves to being overlooked and undervalued. Hands shot up with questions about specific programs, timelines for applications, and requirements for different certifications. The energy in the room was electric with possibility. Later that afternoon, while reviewing updated safety protocols with department heads, Ethan's phone buzzed with a text message from Lily. He glanced down to see her excited words. "Got an A+ on my engineering project. Marina's mentoring really helped. The teacher wants to submit it to a state competition." Pride swelled in his chest like a warm tide as he quickly typed back a response filled with congratulations and love. His daughter was blossoming under Marina's guidance and the new opportunities available to her, her natural talents finally finding the nurturing and encouragement they had always deserved. As the workday began winding toward its close, Marina appeared at his door once again, this time carrying an elegant cream-colored envelope with the company's embossed logo. There was something special about her demeanor, a barely contained excitement that made her eyes sparkle. "The company is hosting a celebration this weekend," she said, approaching his desk and extending the formal invitation. "It's to honor the workers who have shown exceptional dedication during this transition and to celebrate all the positive changes we've implemented together. I would love for you and Lily to be there as our special guests." Ethan accepted the envelope, immediately noticing how Marina's fingers lingered for just a moment as she passed it to him. The brief contact, sending a small thrill through both of them. Their eyes met and held, and he saw in her gaze the same warmth, affection, and growing connection that he'd been feeling develop between them over these transformative weeks. "We would be honored to attend," he said softly, his voice carrying deeper meaning than the simple acceptance of a social invitation. Good, Marina replied, her usually professional demeanor melting away entirely to reveal something much more personal and vulnerable. Because it honestly wouldn't be the same celebration without both of you there. You've become essential to everything we're building here. She turned to leave, but paused in the doorway, looking back at him with an expression that was both proud and slightly amazed. You know, Ethan, what you've accomplished here in just 1 week, it's genuinely remarkable. You've helped create the kind of workplace I always dreamed was possible, but wasn't sure could actually exist in the real world. The complete sincerity in her voice, the genuine admiration and gratitude touched him more deeply than any formal recognition or award ever could. As she walked away, her heels clicking softly on the polished floor, Ethan remained seated for a moment, taking in the full scope of his transformed surroundings. He looked around his office with fresh eyes, seeing the training schedules filled with names and aspirations on the whiteboard, the growing stack of applications representing dreams finally given wings, and Lily's photograph smiling back at him with the confidence of a young woman who now believed in limitless possibilities. In just 7 remarkable days, so much had changed, not just in the factory's culture and operations, but in their entire lives, their hopes for the future, and their understanding of what was truly possible when people chose to do what was right. Through his window, he could see the evening shift workers heading home after their day, and the sight filled him with quiet satisfaction. They walked with straight backs and lifted heads, talking and laughing together like colleagues and friends rather than competitors fearful of losing their jobs. The atmosphere of fear and tension that had once haunted these halls like a malevolent spirit was dissolving more each day, steadily being replaced by something new and precious. Genuine hope for a better tomorrow. The factory courtyard had been transformed into something that seemed almost magical. String lights crisscrossed overhead in careful patterns, creating a warm golden glow that pushed back against the deepening purple of sunset. The harsh industrial walls that usually surrounded the space had been softened by garlands of ivy and small paper lanterns that swayed gently in the evening breeze. Workers and their families filled every corner of the courtyard, their animated conversations and genuine laughter mixing with soft acoustic music that drifted from speakers tucked discreetly among the decorations. Round tables dotted the entire space, each one draped in crisp white cloths and decorated with mason jars full of wildflowers that had been picked from the fields just outside town. The smell of barbecue and fresh bread wafted through the air, mingling with the sweet scent of the wildflowers. Children ran between the tables, their delighted squeals adding to the festive atmosphere, while their parents watched with relaxed smiles that hadn't been seen in this workplace for far too long. Ethan stood near the edge of the gathering, close to where the courtyard met the main factory building, taking in the scene with quiet amazement that bordered on disbelief. Just weeks ago, this same courtyard had been a place of tension and barely contained anger, where workers gathered only for mandatory meetings and whispered about threats and fear. The concrete beneath his feet was the same, but everything else had changed completely. Now it buzzed with genuine joy and the kind of camaraderie that comes when people finally feel safe to be themselves. His daughter Lily stood close beside him, practically glowing with excitement as she wore a new dress that Marina had helped her pick out for this special occasion. The soft green fabric brought out the color in her eyes, and she had spent extra time that afternoon carefully braiding her hair. Ethan had watched her get ready with a mixture of pride and amazement at how much she had grown in these past few weeks. "Dad, look how many people came!" Lily squeezed his arm tightly, her eyes bright with the kind of excitement that only teenagers could truly feel. Mrs. Patterson brought her whole family, and even Mr. Rodriguez is here with his grandkids. I didn't think he even liked parties. Before Ethan could respond, Marina approached them through the crowd, moving with the grace that came naturally to her but looking more relaxed than he had ever seen her. She wore a simple blue dress that was elegant but deliberately casual, completely different from her usual corporate attire. She had made a conscious choice to dress down for this event, wanting to make herself accessible to the workers and their families, rather than maintaining the distance that her position might normally require. "Are you ready for this?" she asked Ethan with a warm smile that reached all the way to her eyes. "They're about to start the ceremony." Ethan nodded slowly, though his stomach churned with the kind of nervous energy that made his hands slightly unsteady. He had never been comfortable being the center of attention, even positive attention like this. He much preferred the quiet acts of kindness that went unnoticed, the small gestures that help people without anyone keeping track or making a big deal about it. The music began to fade gradually, and James Harrison, one of the veteran workers who had been among the first to support their cause during those difficult early days, stepped up to a small wooden podium that had been positioned near the center of the courtyard. The crowd slowly quieted, conversations trailing off as all eyes turned toward him. Even the children seemed to sense that something important was about to happen. Friends and colleagues, James began, his weathered voice carrying clearly across the courtyard in the evening air. We're here tonight to celebrate something truly special. We're not just celebrating corporate reform or policy changes. We're here to celebrate how one simple act of human kindness sparked a chain reaction that changed all our lives in ways we never could have imagined. Workers throughout the crowd nodded in agreement, their faces reflecting a mixture of gratitude and emotion. Several people wiped away tears that had started to form as they remembered how dark things had seemed just a short time ago. James gestured toward a covered object that stood near the podium, draped in a simple white cloth that stirred slightly in the evening breeze. Sometimes the biggest changes in our lives start with the smallest gestures, he continued, his voice growing stronger as he spoke. Sometimes a single moment of compassion can change everything that comes after. In this case, all of this started with something as simple as a shared lunch between strangers. Two workers stepped forward with careful, reverent movements and slowly unveiled a bronze plaque that had been mounted on a sturdy stone pedestal. The bronze gleamed softly in the string lights, and Ethan's breath caught in his throat as he read the words that had been etched into the metal with careful precision. Because one man shared his lunch, thunderous applause erupted immediately, echoing off the factory walls and seeming to fill the entire evening sky. The sound was overwhelming and heartfelt, carrying with it all the gratitude and relief that these families had been feeling. Lily gripped her father's hand so tightly that her knuckles turned white, her face absolutely glowing with pride for the man who had raised her. Marina stood on his other side, close enough that he could feel the warmth of her presence, and she discreetly brushed away a tear that had escaped despite her efforts to maintain her composure. James waved Ethan forward with an encouraging smile. Ethan Cole, would you come up here and say a few words to all of us? Ethan walked to the podium slowly, each step feeling both heavy and weightless at the same time. His heart pounded so hard he was sure everyone could hear it, and his palms were damp with nervous sweat. He wasn't prepared for a speech, had never been good with formal words or public speaking. But as he reached the podium and looked out at the sea of faces before him, people he'd worked alongside for years, families he'd watched grow, children he'd seen take their first steps, the words began to come naturally from his heart. I'm not good at fancy speeches, he began, his voice steady despite the nerves that made his hands tremble slightly as he gripped the sides of the podium. I've never been the kind of person who knows the right words for occasions like this. But that day in the park, when I shared my lunch with Marina, I want you all to know that I wasn't trying to be a hero or make some kind of grand gesture. I just saw another human being who was hurting, and I did what felt right in that moment. He paused, looking out at the crowd and gathering his thoughts while the evening breeze rustled through the decorations above them. But I've been thinking a lot about that day, and I've realized that's what real community is about, isn't it? It's about truly seeing each other's pain instead of looking away. It's about sharing what we have, even when we don't have much. It's about standing up for what's right, even when it's scary and we don't know how things will turn out. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd like gentle waves, and Ethan could see heads nodding throughout the gathered families. His confidence grew as he continued. But I need all of you to understand something important. The real heroes of this story are all of you. You're the workers who found the courage to come forward with your stories when it would have been safer to stay quiet. You're the people who refused to look away from injustice, even when speaking up put your jobs at risk, and most especially, Marina Dawson deserves recognition as the person who had the tremendous courage to fight for change when it would have been so much easier to just look the other way and protect her own interests. More applause followed, warmer and even more heartfelt than before, and Marina ducked her head modestly while color rose in her cheeks. Ethan finished his impromptu speech simply from the heart. Thank you all for this incredible honor. It means more to me than I can possibly express. But please, I want you to remember something important. This plaque isn't really about me or what I did. It's about what can happen when we choose. kindness over fear, when we choose hope over despair, and when we choose to stand together instead of facing our challenges alone. As Ethan stepped away from the podium on slightly unsteady legs, the entire crowd rose as one in a thunderous standing ovation that seemed to go on forever. Workers he'd known for years came forward to shake his hand with firm grips or offer warm hugs that spoke more than words ever could. Their wives approached to thank him personally for making their husband's workplace safer and more humane. Their children looked at him with the kind of pure admiration that only children could give, seeing him as a real-life hero who had made their world better. Later in the evening, as the celebration continued under the soft glow of the twinkling string lights and the conversations grew more intimate and personal, Marina found a quiet moment to gently pull Ethan aside. They walked together to a peaceful corner of the courtyard, near a small garden area where the music was softer and they could speak privately without being overheard by the other guests. "Your speech was absolutely perfect," she said softly, her voice filled with genuine admiration. "It was simple and true and heartfelt, just like you are as a person." Ethan smiled, genuinely touched by her words and the sincerity with which she spoke them. "This whole evening still feels a bit surreal to me. I keep thinking I'm going to wake up and find out it was all just a dream." Marina nodded with understanding, then took a deep breath that seemed to require real courage. "Ethan, there's something I need to tell you, something that's been on my heart for weeks now." She glanced over at Lily, who was enthusiastically showing her detailed engineering sketches to a group of impressed factory workers who were examining them with genuine interest and amazement. "These past few weeks, getting to know you and watching you with Lily, seeing the kind of father you are and the kind of man you are, it's changed me in ways I never expected. It's become so much more than just work for me." Her voice grew quieter and more vulnerable, revealing the uncertainty beneath her usually confident exterior. I really hope that I can remain part of your lives moving forward, part of both of your lives. Not just as the CEO who happened to cross paths with you, but as..." She trailed off, clearly uncertain how to finish the sentence, afraid of presuming too much or moving too fast. Ethan looked at her thoughtfully for a long moment, really seeing her in the soft light of the evening. He could see past the confident exterior she usually wore to the woman who had cried on a park bench that first day, the woman who had risked everything to do what was right. Slowly, gently, with the kind of care he might use with something precious, he reached for her hand. Her fingers were cool and slightly trembling against his work-roughened palm. "I'd like that very much," he said simply. His words carrying all the sincerity and warmth he felt. "We both would. Lily already thinks of you as family, and so do I." Marina's fingers tightened around his, with obvious relief and joy, and they stood together in comfortable, meaningful silence, watching the celebration unfold around them like something out of a beautiful dream. The sound of laughter and conversation filled the air, along with the gentle music and the evening breeze that stirred the decorations overhead. Lily soon noticed them standing together and came over with a bright smile, slipping her small hand into her father's free one with the natural ease of a daughter who had never doubted her place in his heart. Under the soft, magical glow of the string lights, with the factory walls transformed into something beautiful and hopeful, Ethan stood with Marina and Lily beside him. He felt a deep sense of peace and gratitude, knowing with absolute certainty that a simple act of compassion had somehow turned into a chain of events that had changed all their lives forever and for the better. What would you do if you were in their place? Comment your answer below and let's see how you'd rewrite the ending. If you enjoyed the story of Ethan Cole, I handpicked the next story that you will enjoy. Please don't miss this one. Click here to watch it.